All right. Welcome back to the live show. Welcome back to the live show. We are back for another episode. Welcome back to the live show. It is your boy Genesis, and it is currently 1:26 a.m. And of course, today's date is the 21st of August 2025. Yes, we're back. It is past midnight for sure. So, welcome to Nightcap. All right. This is a nightcap session. All right. With that being said, we're going to check out what's been going on today slash yesterday. And this conversation is about the great thing about America. All right. Like I always say, God is the greatest. That's for sure. And to me, my opinion is America is the greatest land on the face of the earth. Everybody has their own opinions, but that's my opinion. All right. So, with that being said, we're going to sit back, relax, and enjoy this particular show here with Anity. And here we go. Don't forget, be nice in the comment section. This is the United States. All right. This is not the divided state. Okay. And whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, really doesn't matter. It really does not matter. What matters is you love the United States, and that's it. All right. 9 times out of 10, you're talking to your fellow American brother or American sister. So when you're being mean or unkind, that's not American. All right. Here we go.
I think it's important to set the record straight. Putin's invasion of Europe was not just made possible by our weak European allies, but also past Democratic presidents played a huge role. Take a look.
But we ain't going to act like he caused this now. It's Democrats in office. It was Biden in office when a full-fledged war against Ukraine took place, courtesy of Russia's instigation, no matter what they try to say to Trump. It was Russia that invaded Crimea, and that was under the Obama administration. It was Clinton in office when you made a deal that disarmed Ukraine and therefore weakened them, leaving them dependent on the United States. And now here they are having to beg for support that they're owed because of what we promised them as a nation. We promised them this. You owe it to the Ukrainians. You absolutely do. I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying I like spending billions of our taxpayer dollars to them. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is promises made are supposed to be promises kept.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Here now with more ESPN host Stephen A. Smith. You know what the liberal media does every time you're on? You're on. No matter if we're having a fun exchange as friends. Stephen A. schools Hannity. Doesn't matter if I'm just letting you talk, letting you rant and rave. I would say that listening to you on your podcast, you sound more like me every day. I would argue you have been Hannitized. I would argue I've been a great influence for you in your life.
I will never, ever, ever concede or confess to such a stain. Hell no, I'm not giving you that. But I will say when it comes to politics, I am schooled more by you than you are by me. There is no doubt about that. Sports is my lane. I'm venturing into politics. Politics is your lane.
When I go into the sports lane, it's bad. I go down your lane, you write me and say, stop.
Don't let me get started with your Tebow takes. Don't even let me throw that up at you. But I will say this. As I venture into this lane, one of the things that I'll say is that I just think it's important. Listen, what you know is what you know. What you don't know is what you don't know. But when you know stuff and then you omit it on purpose, I'm going to have an issue with that. And I think in the case of this Russia-Ukraine conflict, I thought it was important to defer back to history, recognizing what Clinton did in 1994 when he visited Ukraine and he compelled them to give up 1,900 nuclear warheads, or that they ultimately returned to Russia. I think it's important for us to remember that. In 2014, when they invaded Crimea and they took over that and they wanted lethal aid, and the Obama administration sent non-lethal aid because they didn't want to engage the U.S. in a U.S.-Russia proxy war, That's actually happened under his administration. When you think about what transpired in 2022 and how it's a full-fledged war, it doesn't escape me that that's something that happened. Now, obviously, under Republican leadership, they also took over Georgia, if I remember correctly. So we're not pointing all the fingers at the Democratic Party. But in the end, if we're going to tell a story, let's tell a story to the American people and give them a clear depiction of what's transpiring before our very eyes. And when I see a flagrant intent not to do that, just because you want to get at Trump, listen, I don't hesitate to criticize the president when I feel he deserves it. Donald Trump, as far as I'm concerned, has had a few occasions where he deserves criticism. But on this particular situation, he's done more than we've seen any Democrat in office try to do when it comes to Russia. And I just don't get it. So I said so, and I don't regret it.
You know, I mean, it is kind of interesting if you look at Egypt, Ethiopia, if you look at Iran and Israel, if you look at all the varying, Rwanda, if you look at the Congo, if you look at, all these India, Pakistan, there's 7 separate conflicts. You would not have picked Donald Trump at the top of your list, Stephen A. Smith, because we've had way too many conversations as the guy that is willing to expend the political capital with not much benefit for him politically.
That's fair.
But there's a lot of downside. There's a lot of risks that people will scream failure, failure, failure. And he's been successful 7 times. I put that list up many, many times on this show. I'll put it up again as you speak. But he's been successful help playing a part.
What I have said to you, what I've argued and pushed back with you is that a ceasefire, a pause in the conflict is not the end of a war. So I've pushed back on you against that because sometimes there's so many people fawning over Donald Trump that they negate to make that point. But there is no doubt that he has done more than practically almost any administration has tried to do when it comes to ending conflicts around the world. And he's put himself in a position where the political capital that he stands to gain isn't necessarily that great. So his willingness to do so is obviously something that shouldn't be ignored and something that should be, dare I say, applauded to some degree. Again, that doesn't mean I like everything he does. You and I can argue back and forth about a few things. But in the end, you are absolutely right when you point out that there's not much to gain for him in a lot of this, yet he engages anyway, and you have to give credit where credit is due.
I'm hearing that. All right, so let me ask you this. I think your party has a problem. We've talked a lot about it. You mentioned Clinton really sold out the Ukrainians. You're right. Obama did nothing. He didn't lift a finger when they annexed Crimea. Joe Biden did nothing except said don't when he was building up troops and military might on the Ukrainian border. Putin was. So really, the party that betrayed Ukraine is the Democratic Party. Now the party seems to want Donald Trump to fail on every front. I would think that it would be in everybody's best interest. I don't know what's happened to your party. They're the party that cares about the rights of illegals over the safety of Americans, the party that cares about men's rights to play women's sports, the party that wants defund, dismantle, no bail laws. And your party is the party of Mamdani, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Pocahontas, and Grandpa Bernie. That's your party, and I don't understand. You don't seem like that.
I keep telling you to stop calling it my party. I think the party needs to be purged.
It is your party.
I told you. I don't believe they represent, what historical Democrats stood for. I think it's entirely different right now. Party? I think it's problematic. And well, listen, again, I don't feel that way. I'm a centrist. I'm not like these Democrats that are out here trying to run New York and California and all this stuff. I'm not like that. I'm not like that. I'm not down for socialism. I'm not down for open borders. I'm not down for a lot of this stuff.
Forget socialism.
If I was the head of the party,
now.
it would be different. Excuse me? I'm sorry.
So why don't you just say, Donald Trump is doing a great job, and I think you were right, Mr. Hannity, but
I'm not sure about that yet. We will see. We will see. I'm not sure yet.
Oh, I'm sure.
When I'm sure, I'll let you know.
Stephen A. Smith, ladies and gentlemen. One thing I'll tell you is he's just a guy with common sense, okay? Of course, he's an entertainer as well. He has his own podcast and shit. But look, he definitely has every conservative mindset, okay? No open borders, all right? The liberal style in New York and California, he doesn't like it. So he's pretty much a conservative, but he wouldn't say that. So, Democrat. That's why most Democrats don't like him right now, especially the ones in the political sector. So let's go, let's go, let's go. JD Vance, baby.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for having us here today.
Good to see you.
So you had quite an eventful morning over at Union Station, as we saw in that clip. Tell us about how you decided to go over there. You know, a lot of us D.C. residents and former D.C. residents know it well, but it's been the site of a lot of crime in recent years.
Of course.
And you decided to pay a visit. What happened?
Well, so a couple things. So first of all, I had heard from a couple of friends who used to avoid Union Station because there were vagrants and there were crazy people screaming at kids that they avoided Union Station. But over the past 9 days, since the president did this emergency order, it looks a lot better. It feels a lot safer. So I was talking with Stephen Miller and with Pete Hegseth about this in the Oval Office yesterday. And I was like, you know, we should just go over there and say hello to people. And you've got a lot of National Guardsmen over there, some D.C. cops who have been heckled by some of the protesters. So I thought, what a good show of moral support to have the vice president and some of the senior team at the White House show up. We bought him some burgers, hang out with him a little bit. And actually, the most interesting thing, Laura, was after the cameras left, Pete and Steve and I stayed and, you know, had lunch with these troops and just learned a lot about what they're seeing, about how much the city has changed in just the past 9 days. So crazy statistic. You know, violent crime has dropped in D.C. 35% in 9 days. Robberies in D.C. have dropped 55% in 9 days. And it highlights the fact that this living with lawlessness and disorder, that's fundamentally a question of political will. If you've got the political will to enforce the law, you can make even cities like D.C. safe again. And that's what we're demonstrating. And I hope that the American people take an important lesson from this, because obviously D.C. is a federal city, New York, L.A., these places are not. I hope the American people just recognize that you don't have to live with lawlessness. You don't have to live with third world murder rates. If you just take control of these cities, you can make them safe places to live in.
So your pal Gavin Newsom calls this an abuse of power, that this is just a power grab, and this is all stunt for show, and that you all are going to roll through other cities. You've heard things about, it's martial law is going to be declared. And to that you say?
Well, first of all, how is it a power grab or how is it a stunt when we've already declined murders by 35% in 9 days? How many people are living and breathing today because Donald Trump had the willpower to say, you know what, we're sick of D.C. being a home to lawlessness. We're going to bring some public order back to the nation's capital. So what I would say to Gavin Newsom or to anybody else in some of these big blue states or big blue cities is you can have law and order, you can have common decency, you can have public spaces that young families can go to again. Tell you a story, Laura. A couple of years ago, the last time I was in Union Station, I took my little kids there to get lunch, and they were being screamed at by homeless people, not compassionate to the homeless people to let them just fester when they clearly have mental health problems, not compassionate to young families to not be able to go into one of America's great public spaces without being screamed at by a person clearly suffering
Why are Democrats
from a mental
doing
illness.
this?
I don't know.
Why is this a political
know.
strategy?
Laura, I have thought about this so often and so many times. I don't know why Democrats seem to love public disorder and chaos almost as a political ideology. And I think that part of what's going on is Democrats have gotten so divorced from the communities that they allegedly serve that they don't realize the gross majority of residents in D.C., they want to walk through Union Station and just have a bite to eat or enjoy the space with their families. They don't realize that so many people have been absolutely terrorized by Democrat crime policies. And so maybe they just don't make the connection between what Gavin Newsom says and the fact that places like D.C. or Los Angeles have some of the highest murder rates in the world.
And the D.C. police are being investigated for potentially manipulating their crime data. I've heard this from other police forces across the country. Great cops, beat cops in places like Chicago have said, some of the crimes are reclassified to make a burglary something that's more of a disturbance, and that kind of stuff happens. But is this a federal issue at this point, if this is a manipulation of data and if it's widespread?
Well, it's certainly something that's being investigated, and I hope that we'll uncover what's going on. But even aside from any manipulation of data, when you have 911 wait times that are so long, a lot of crime doesn't even get reported. And we heard this all the time. People would say, well, my home's being robbed. I'm not even going to call the police because it's going to be 45 minutes before they show up. And that's not an indictment of the beat cop, by the way. They're so overwhelmed by how much violent crime there is that they're unable to actually bring public safety to these communities. So what we're doing is just changing the balance a little bit. We're putting more good guys on the streets, and we're taking more bad guys off the streets. And we think that's the sort of thing that's going to bring public safety back to D.C. Again, it's already working in a very big way.
Now, on to Ukraine. Your February meeting with Zelensky and the president, that was quite something to behold.
It was good
how
TV.
How did you all break the ice this time? Take us into the room, because we're all dying to know that.
Well, I think so President Zelensky walked into the Oval Office. I was chatting with him, with the president, with some of the senior Ukrainian delegation. I said, Mr. President, so long as you behave, I won't say anything. And he just chuckled a little bit. And it was a good little icebreaker. I mean, what the president's trying to do, meaning our president is trying to do, is bring a 3.5-year, very brutal conflict to a stop. It's killed way too many Ukrainians, way too many Russians. It's completely transformed the economy of Europe and of big parts of Asia. We just got to get back to peace. And I really do think you heard Vladimir Putin say this, that if Donald Trump had been president in 2022, this war would have never started. And now the president is really spending a lot of time, a lot of effort to stop Joe Biden's war, because I think it is Joe Biden's war. Without him being weak and provocative, I don't think that Russia would have invaded Ukraine. And now we have a situation where the president is trying to be strong and bold and trying to bring this thing to a close.
Now, take us into the room when the president said, I'm going to call Putin now. And you got the Western leaders, they've all come to Washington. Now, what was their facial expression at that point? Did they anticipate that this was going to happen? Because it was, 8 hours ahead, Moscow time?
Yeah, it was like 1 a.m. Moscow time, and they had no anticipation. So we're actually in the east wing of the White House, and the president says, we've had a pretty good meeting. I'm going to go call Vladimir Putin and see what he says about it. And everybody's like, oh, you're going to call him next week? And he's like, no, what time is it in Moscow? Let's call him right now. And I think one of the things I realized about President Trump's leadership is he cuts through the BS of some of these diplomatic protocols and just says, I'm going to get things done. If I want to talk to somebody, I'm going to talk to somebody. You had a lot of the Europeans who were saying, no, there needs to be proper, vetting, and the teams have to prepare the phone call and blah, 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 blah. And the president was like, no. I want to talk to the guy. I'm going to talk to the guy. And I think that kind of no holds barred, no BS diplomacy is part of the reason why we've made the progress we have. And we've made a lot of progress, Laura. Look, who knows what's going to happen? The president tells me this all the time. You can never say with certainty what the outcome in this situation is going to be. But we now have the Russians talking to the Ukrainians. They're talking details about what would be necessary on each side to stop the fighting and stop the killing. We've made more progress in 3 months than the country had made in 3 years in stopping this conflict. And I think it's because sometimes you just need a president who will pick up the phone and call somebody.
When Vladimir Putin meets with Volodymyr Zelensky, can we assume that all the big details will have been discussed and generally agreed upon, namely the security agreement and land swap?
It's a good question. I think that if you go through the bureaucratic process, then the answer is yes. But I think the president's preference and my preference would be, let's have them meet regardless. You don't have to figure out every issue. And sometimes leaders sitting down face to face can break the logjam that their teams don't necessarily have the ability to do. There really are 2 big questions lingering out there. And in some ways it's very simple, but in some ways it's very complicated. Number 1 is Ukraine wants to know that it's not going to get invaded again by Russia. It wants to know that it's got territorial integrity long into the future. The Russians want certain pieces of territory, most of which they've occupied, but some of which they haven't. So that is really where the meat of the negotiation is. The Ukrainians want security guarantees. The Russians want a certain amount of territory. Again, we finally got the details. We're working on them, but we haven't figured everything out. And I don't think that we should force, we shouldn't say that they can't sit down until you've figured out every little detail. Sometimes them sitting down is what facilitates figuring out those details.
You have been so strong on the idea of Europe paying for Europe's defense.
Sure.
And I think a lot of Americans don't understand that the EU GDP last year was about $19.18 trillion, if I'm right, give or take. And the UK's is about $2.9 trillion. Sure. Ours is $29.8 trillion, right?
You know the numbers better than I do. You should be Treasury Secretary.
Sorry, Scott, I got your job. Now, but so this is a lot of money. Europe has the money to defend itself. So the security agreement, my question to you is, Why should America carry the lion's share of the burden from now until Lord knows when for Europe when Europe has the money to defend itself?
Well, I don't think we should carry the burden here. I think that we should be helpful if it's necessary to stop the war and to stop the killing. But I think that we should expect, and the president certainly expects, Europe to play the leading role here. And what he said very clearly is, look, the United States is open to having the conversation, but we're not going to make commitments until we figure out what's going to be necessary to stop the war in the first place. And I think that it's, the president is very good. He never takes anything off the table. He never puts anything fully on the table because he doesn't want to give away his leverage. And this is the private conversation that we're all going to have about what's necessary to stop the war. But no matter what happens, no matter what form this takes, the Europeans are going to have to take the lion's share of the burden. It's their continent, it's their security, and the president's been very clear they're going to have to step up here.
What's it like meeting Putin? What was he like, just one-on-one?
So I've actually never met Putin. The president did that meeting. I've talked to him on the phone a number of times. It's interesting. He's more soft-spoken than you would necessarily expect. The American media has a particular image of him. He's soft-spoken in a certain way. He's very deliberate. He's very careful. And I think fundamentally he's a person who looks out for the interests as he sees it of Russia. And I think one of the reasons he respects the President of the United States is because he knows the President looks out for the interests of the American people. And while they often disagree about issues, and obviously the president has been very critical of Vladimir Putin, the president's also willing to work with anybody if he thinks it's going to accomplish an important goal for America. And we all agree an important goal is to stop the killing.
Let's move to the economy, because that is still the number one issue in the United States for most voters.
Sure.
The Democrats seem to be banking on an economic downturn, just like they seem to be banking on chaos in the streets against the National Guard.
Sure.
How do you see the economy in the next 6 months as we're seeing some continuing uncertainty regarding interest rates and Jerome Powell?
Well, unfortunately, you have the Democrats. I think they really are betting against the United States. We're betting on the United States and the American people. There are a lot of good things happening in the economy. You have a lot of new investment coming in part because the tariffs. People are trying to avoid the tariffs by building in the United States, which is their whole point, Laura, and why the president has been right about this issue from the beginning. You see blue-collar wages rising at their fastest rate in 50, 60 years. You see inflation cooling off, though there's still a lot of work to do there. So I feel very good about where the economy is. You can never predict the future, but I think what people all over the world recognize is that it's a time to build in the United States of America. If you want to build a car, you want to build a car manufacturing facility, if you want to build a next generation technology facility, if you want to build houses, whatever you want to do, we are the place to do business.
How about rare earths and magnets, which is what we're dependent on with China, which gives them an enormous amount of leverage over us.
And that's something the president has really directed the entire team to fix that issue, because whether it's rare earth magnets or pharmaceuticals, he wants the United States to depend on Americans. We should not be in a situation where foreign adversaries or competitors have control over critical parts of our economy. Think about this, Laura. God forbid Americans are in some sort of conflict and we can't get antibiotics because we're in a conflict against a country that makes the antibiotics. You don't have economic freedom and you don't have real prosperity unless you make your own stuff. That's why the president of the United States is making it so much easier to build things and make things in America.
Now, I know you love talking about politics because you're going to say, well, we can't look forward to 2028. I understand that.
I'm sick of politics,
But Democrats are still doing their 2024 autopsy.
Yes.
Okay. And part of their autopsy is that going forward, they need to kind of be more like Trump in tone, tougher, have nicknames. Newsom's given you a nickname, which I don't even understand, called Just Dance Vance. So I guess, what's your favorite dance? What's your favorite dance music? I mean, it's the dumbest nickname. But how lost are the Democrats right now? And you can answer the dance question.
I mean, look, the autopsy for the Democrats, some free political advice from the President of the United States is stop sounding like crazy people. That really is all it is. I mean, this idea that Gavin Newsom is somehow going to mimic Donald Trump's style, I think that ignores the fundamental genius of President Trump's political success, which is that he's authentic. He just is who he is. You've got to be yourself. You've actually got to talk to people honestly about the issues. I don't think it's that complicated. Don't be a crazy person. Be authentic. If the Democrats did that, they'd do a hell of a lot better. But the thing is, the Democrats really can't help themselves. If you look at the transgender issue, they're still talking about letting men playing women's sports. If you look at the crime issue, they're calling Donald Trump a fascist for taking action that in 9 days has dropped armed robberies by 55%. So part of sounding less crazy is being less crazy. And if the Democrats were less crazy, I think we'd all get along a whole lot better.
I'm not trying to pick on California because I am a member of the California bar, so don't get me here. But look, we've had a situation where they're giving commercial driver's licenses to illegal aliens who can't speak English.
Who don't have basic English competency.
And they're killing Americans,
which matters a whole lot, because if you're going to read a road sign, Laura, you might as well, or you need to actually read the language the road sign is written in. And of course, this illegal alien in California killed 3 innocent people because he was reckless, he was dangerous, he shouldn't have been in the country. But now we come to find out he can't even read in the language the road signs are written in. So this is, again, it goes to the Democrats' basic problem, which is they're just too crazy. Imagine if you had a Democratic Party that was focused on enhancing the prosperity and the safety of American citizens rather than bringing in millions of low-wage illegal immigrants, giving them the right to vote, and allowing them to effectively make it harder for Americans to live a good life. That's all this is about. They care more about low-wage foreigners than they do about their own people. That is the fundamental craziness at the heart of the Democratic Party. And until they change that, Gavin Newsom can mimic Donald Trump all that he wants to. They're still going to lose unless they get better policies that actually serve the American people.
Given the fact that they're endangering the lives and killing American citizens, as we saw with that horrific crash in Florida.
Literally killing American citizens.
Literally killing Americans. I mean, these are not made up statistics. These just happen. I mean, federal highway funds, that's leverage that the federal government has over the states that refuse to do the basics.
That's exactly
Would you
right.
consider advising that DOT and the administration pull back on federal highway funds for these states?
So I don't want to get ahead of any administration announcements, but we are looking at a whole host of points of leverage we can exercise over California and other states to make sure they comply with the law. Sanctuary cities are killing people because you allow these violent criminals to set up shop in your cities. Obviously, you saw this case with the person who murdered people on the road, 3 people on the road, because he couldn't even read the road signs. We have a lot of points of leverage here, but fundamentally, I think the American people have to stand with us here. Because when we go and tell the governor of California or the governor of New York that you have to stop putting the interests of illegal aliens over American citizens, we need the American people to stand with us. And I think that they will. I think that they are. But we're definitely not going to let this slide, Laura. You can't do it. You've got to stop putting the interests of foreigners who don't have the right to be here over the interests of American citizens. That is the entire point and purpose of the Democratic Party. If you go back to the election of 2024, what was the big issue? The big issue was illegal immigration. They were actually defending the rights of illegal immigrants to come into our country, to vote in our elections, to collect Social Security and Medicaid that ought by right go to American citizens, to say nothing of housing. This is actually the biggest driver of housing costs in some of these big blue cities, is that they've flooded the zone with illegal immigrants. As we've kicked illegal aliens out of our country, you actually see housing costs start to level off. So fundamentally, the difference between Republicans and Democrats is we care about American citizens. They actually don't like American citizens and want to replace them with low-wage foreigners. It's a very stark difference, and I think the American people are going to continue to reward us because of it.
All right. When Elon Musk departed, he said it was, dramatic departure. And I know you know him well, you're good friends with him, but he said he's going to start a third party and that sent everyone into the stratosphere. But he's since kind of backed off that. And now, according to the Wall Street Journal, he is considering backing you in 2028. I know you don't want to get ahead of the president. He's only 7 months into this. But would that be something you would welcome, certainly his staying in politics and perhaps supporting you down the road?
Yeah, so I saw the story, and as far as I can tell, the story is completely fake. I've never talked with Elon Musk or, frankly, any other donor about 2028. I do think that it would be a huge mistake for Elon to go forward with a third party. And my argument to him is, whether you like it or not, you are now perceived by the far left as on the side of the American right. You believe in law and order. You believe in closed borders. You believe in economic growth and prosperity. You believe in making things in the United States of America. The idea that Elon is ever going to go back to being sort of in the middle, where Democrats and Republicans both like him, that's just not going to happen. He is perceived as being on the American right. And so if he doesn't like things the Republican Party is doing, my advice to Elon would be try to fix the Republican Party. Try to push it in your own way. Disagree with me all you want, disagree with the President of the United States, but don't pretend that you can make a big difference with a third party. I think Elon would make a much bigger difference if he stayed loyal to President Trump's Republican Party. And if he had disagreements, express those disagreements from the inside as opposed to from the outside.
The New York Times just reported that the Democrats are in a voter registration spiral. 2.1 million Americans ditched the Democrat Party between 2020 and 2024. Meanwhile, the GOP is doing pretty well. They're gaining 2.4 million. So is this a moment where we could see the midterm curse reversed and the Republican Party gain some ground?
I think we have a good chance, but take nothing for granted, Laura. You have the Democrats are still trying to register illegal aliens. They still explicitly say that they want illegal aliens to vote in federal elections. We still have, I think, a lot of headwinds from the media. They never tell the truth about what we're doing, about what the president has accomplished for the American people. So don't rest on our laurels. Keep on achieving victories for the American people and keep on trying to win. That's our path to being able to continue to govern this country. I'm not going to bank anything in 2026. We just have to keep working at it.
Who's your best friend in the cabinet?
We have a lot of good friends, right? I mean, the weird thing is you say it's one person, then fundamentally that's an insult to other people. I mean, Marco and I are very close. We were close in the Senate. He's been a great friend of mine. I think he's doing a great job. Pete Hegseth, who I went to Union Station, I think is doing a great job as Secretary of Defense. And really the D.C. swamp tried to destroy Pete Hegseth unlike anybody in the administration. And that really kind of, whenever I see the worst people in the world trying to tear a guy down, that makes me think he's on our side.
Are you doing push-ups and pull-ups with him and Bobby? Are you?
I have not yet done, and I'm sure they can do more push-ups and pull-ups than I have. But I am, it's funny. I do love this presidential focus on fitness. And Bobby and Pete are obviously leading the way, but I'm going to participate as much as I can.
You're going to Georgia, big, beautiful bill. Can we expect any fireworks down there? What can we say?
Well, I guess it depends on who's going to show up to the rally. But yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun, talk about the big successes of the big, beautiful bill, the fact that it lowers taxes for the gross majority of Americans, the fact that we're making it easier to build things in America again. So we're going to have a good time, and we're going to talk about all the things the president's doing just to make people's lives better. That's the whole reason we're doing this. We want Americans to be able to live safe, prosperous lives in their own country. We made a lot of progress in 7 months. We're going to make a lot more.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey,
but I got to say, man, look, this is the Vice President of the United States, Vice President J.D. Vance. I respect the fact that the former Vice President was the first ever woman Vice President of the United States. However, JD just blows Kamala Harris out of the water. Like, what? This is what a vice president should look like.
It was a fiesta for illegal felons.
Everybody, hoo-hoo-ya.
Uh-oh.
Hoo-hoo-ya. El flauti.
A mariachi band firing up the wokesters at an anti-ICE rally in Boston, hosted by woke Mayor Michelle Wu. She was defending the city's sanctuary policies in defiance of the DOJ that's threatening federal action by yanking their funding.
Silence in the face of oppression is not an option. Stop attacking our cities to hide your administration's failures. Unlike the Trump administration, Boston follows the law. And Boston will not back down from who we are and what we stand for. Boston will never back down from being a beacon of freedom and a home for everyone.
Mayor Wu can serenade illegals all she wants, but here's the alleged child predators Boston's harboring. Bad hombres with rap sheets for crimes like raping a child under 16 and other horrific offenses. Meanwhile, illegals will be saying, shucks, at the new Cornhusker Clink ICE facility in Nebraska. It can already pop in 200 people with plans to expand the bucket to 300. And DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's about to turn up the heat after President Trump asked her to add a coat of black paint to make his big, beautiful wall hotter.
In the hot temperatures down here, when something is painted black, it gets even warmer, and it will make it even harder for people to climb. So we are going to be painting the entire southern border wall black to make sure that we encourage individuals to not come into our country illegally, to not break our federal laws, but that they will abide and come to our country the right way so that they can stay and have the opportunity to become United States citizens and pursue the American dream.
All right, Kellyanne Wu on a collision course with the Trump administration. How does that look like to you?
It looks terrible for her. We have a diminishing number of people now who are actually siding with people like Mayor Wu. Why? Because look what happened in March of 2025. Just a couple of months ago, the Trump administration goes in there and it's effective. They arrest over 370 illegal migrants. 200 plus had serious criminal felonies under their belts, including one 32-year-old jerk who had been arrested for the aggravated rape of a minor and some other offenses. They have also, Jesse, they've been successful this past May, over 1,500 arrests. This is working in cities like Boston. Boston was a melting pot for many years of immigrants. I'm half Irish, half Italian. Folks like that would go to Boston, but they'd have to have a job or a sponsor or both. If they came here as a known criminal, they didn't get in. If they became a criminal after they were here, they were pushed out. That's the way the American dream and the American system has always worked. I always say shine a light on the left, because when more people get to see how ridiculous their antics are, their foolishness, Mayor Wu, Jesse, is not just defying the Trump administration. She is actively saying to people, here's how to resist the DOJ's attempts to comply with federal immigration law. She's telling people, as the chief lawmaker of the city, she's telling people to resist the law. These are not just fighting words. I think that folks like her are putting themselves in tremendous legal peril. The other thing I would just say about it is that when she shows all these people, it just reminds me of the folks in my home of D.C. who are out there protesting. It's never the people whose communities are most affected. It's people telling you what the people in the most affected communities want you to do for them. In D.C., for example, the protesters are a bunch of rich white liberals who live near me in a nice part of D.C. It's not the folks who are saying, yes, please more police presence, please less homeless, please fewer drugs, please safe passage for kids to get to school and not crawl across nonsense. I also, the Tren de Agua, the MS-13, all these folks have been brought to heel in Wu's Boston because of the tough on crime policies. And as for painting the border wall black, President Trump wanted this done in his first term. He asked for this several times. There were a few Democrats in the Oval Office who didn't like that idea. I'm so glad Kristi Noem's out there with her own paint roller brush.
and a mariachi band, Jessica. When you set these press conferences up, does Wu say, Democrats, does Wu say, book me a mariachi band to lead in with it?
I'm not really sure how to do that. I do a lot of things, but event planning is not actually one of them. I haven't been one for the song and dance, whether you're, yodeling outside of the Department of Education or a mariachi band. But Michelle Wu is very popular in Boston, and Donald Trump's immigration policy is not. And you can tell what's going on because people like Stephen Miller and even, what we just heard are talking about an immigration policy that is not actually reflective of how it's being put into practice. That's why Donald Trump is down between 5 and 15 points on immigration. Only 38% support deporting all illegal immigrants. They were saying that they were going to go worst first. That is not how they're doing this. The raids at Home Depots and immigration courts, it's not sitting well with the American people, and it's having the opposite effect of what they wanted. We now have in the latest Gallup polling, 79% now have the highest view in recorded history saying immigration is a good thing for the country. And before you say, well, it's never about not liking immigrants, we just want you to do it the legal way. We just want you to do it the legal way. Part of that also was that they didn't want you going around and picking up people who had been here for decades and were positive members of their communities. Say about D.C. that it's all, white rich people that are doing the protesting. And I saw Stephen Miller said that as well. But the Washington Post is out with new polling. 79% of D.C. residents oppose Trump's takeover of D.C. police, including 80% of black residents and 67% of Latino residents. That sounds to me like a widespread problem of authoritarian overreach on the part of Donald Trump.
Well, actually, it's not, because the country voted to get the bad hombres out.
But those aren't bad hombres.
Well, sure. What about the guy charged with raping a kid, Jessica? Under your rules, that guy's not a criminal because he hasn't been convicted. Yes, it is. Dana?
Well, just zooming out just a little bit. So you have a situation where you have Wu and Healy, the governor of Massachusetts, claiming states' rights, okay? Do you remember when Texas Governor Greg Abbott tried to send Texas National Guard to help defend the border? And the Biden administration said, you can't do that. That's a federal issue. But the feds weren't doing the job. So we tried to make it the state was to go and do the job. Now you have what is a federal responsibility, which is border responsibility, border enforcement, which extends into people who are in communities, especially the ones who have committed crimes, accused of committing crimes. And they're saying, oh, no, this is a states' rights issue. Like, none of that makes sense. So they have a cognitive dissonance on that. I wouldn't be surprised if the Supreme Court tries to take this up quickly when they get back and do some sort of expedited thing, because I think that the country needs more clarity. I think the governors need more clarity, the mayors, and all of the new ICE agents, because this is going to get clogged up in the courts unless there's some sort of clarification, or you're going to have other problems. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I think it's too early to tell how the D.C. crime thing is actually going to turn out in terms of results and also public opinion. If crime gets under control and people feel a lot safer, then those numbers could improve dramatically. I think it's too early to tell.
Greg?
The only poll that matters happened in November 2024. You don't have to listen to the Washington Post. You don't have to listen to these polls anymore. They lied to you. They were wrong about everything. Has anyone in the legacy media ever asked the liberal leader how many illegals are in your city or your state or your country? It seems to me, if you wanted to really fix a problem, you should at least know the size of the problem. And what does that tell you? They never saw it as a problem. It was just a solution to pad up the census. But if you're filling a bucket and you don't care if the bucket can carry those gallons, it's either a sign of mental illness or sabotage. So now we're stuck cleaning up the mess, and it's not pretty, and we're getting yelled at for doing it, but we're doing it. Homes weren't vetted for these migrant kids. You didn't know that because you didn't count them. So now we're stuck being the bad guy for cleaning up your frickin' mess. You know, the Dems should be happy, because remember how they fretted about how the illegals would no longer mow their lawns or wipe their asses or trim their overgrown bush? Good news, there's still plenty of low-wage workers willing to do the jobs that were beneath you. And get this, they're getting paid more because there's no competition from the cheaper labor, i.e. the slaves that you imported over. Should the party that was always screaming about living wages, shouldn't they be happy that Americans are finally getting paid a little more now that you got rid of the illegal labor? No, they're not, because they didn't do it. They didn't want to do it. All about the census. Once again, how would you do this differently? Would you no longer deport? Would you no longer deport the worst first? It doesn't matter, because you conflated both from the start. Just like you're doing with a mariachi band and MS-13. To you, it's the same damn thing. Legal and illegal, worst first, everybody, it's all the same. But the White House distinguished worst from the first in order to do that.
Trump has won so much that it's absolutely almost impossible for the left to come back from this. In 2016, they still sort of kind of like, they found their way back. But now it's like obliterated. MSNBC or MSDNC, they're trying to change their names. Colbert is out. It's over. This man is winning so fast, so quick. My head is spinning.
However, you have to go through the millions of people that you let in. That's how you find the worst. Surprise, you don't even cooperate with that through your sanctuary city mess. This is another issue, Jessica, that you have lost the right to complain. You broke it. You don't get to tell us how to fix it. That is our job. They didn't vote Trump in. They voted you out. And if we listen to you, it is a betrayal to them.
Well said, Greg. And I have
You got to give it to Greg.
not noticed any ungroomed bushes, and I've been looking.
And Jessica's like, yo, I gotta go.
All right, well, a new report showing a lack of oversight from the Biden administration when it came to placing unaccompanied migrant children with unvetted adults. Based on data provided by HHS's Office of Refugee Resettlement, from January 2021 to January 2025, the Senate Judiciary Committee found that almost 11,500 migrant children were placed with unvetted sponsors who were not their parent, not their legal guardian, were not fingerprinted, or did not receive a background check. And those 11,000 children weren't the only ones in potentially dangerous situations. The report goes on to say that during the same period, quote, the Biden-Harris administration did not conduct home studies for almost 80,000 migrant children under the age of 12, including 1,961 who were placed in households where a home study was recommended. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley called the findings appalling and saying this, quote, my oversight continues to expose disturbing evidence that the Biden-Harris administration turned a blind eye to tens of thousands of kids who needed proper supervision and care. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno, and joining us today, Molly Line, Fox News correspondent, Molly Hemingway, Fox News contributor and editor-in-chief of The Federalist, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, and Jeremy Hunt, former Army intelligence captain and Veterans on Duty chairman and attorney. All right, guys, lots to unpack here. It's a horrifying statistic to learn, Jeremy, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally unacceptable. You have 11,000 children who are with unvetted adults. There was one story where there was an address that had 42 kids at one address. And even Secretary Kennedy testified about this. He talked about how there was one individual kept coming back for more and more kids, like seemingly collecting these kids, and he would have different addresses every time. One of the addresses he used was to a strip club. Another address was to an empty lot with shipping containers there. I mean, so what was going on? And so I think, honestly, when you look at the story, this is more than just, oh, we made a mistake, or we should have, been a little bit more careful. No, this was reckless. Someone needs to be held accountable. Someone needs to go to jail for this. I mean, this is absolutely unacceptable. And now, of course, the legacy media won't talk about this, but ICE is actually doing rescue operations, rescuing a lot of these children who are with these unvetted adults. And so, but, we're not going to hear about that on other news networks, but that's a lot of work that's going in right now to get these children back to safety.
Well, this is absolutely horrifying. And the thing is, this is just the amount that are placed in those recklessly unvetted households. But this isn't even, these aren't even the statistics of what occurred there in the households registered to strip clubs with 45 other children in there. This is absolutely appalling.
Right. When President Biden opened up the border, and he did make a big show of it when he ran for office, he said he was going to open the border wide. People started coming immediately. It wasn't just about bringing in workers for low wages that also depressed the wages of legal Americans. It was about all this other stuff that happens, too. The crime that happens through human trafficking and drug trafficking is horrific. And people act like it's so loving to have an open border, even though we've seen just in some of the recent operations, you had the children working at a cannabis farm in California. You had the sex trafficking issue in Nebraska with certain illegal immigrant issues there, underage. These are real crimes with real victims. And so having an open border is not nice and friendly. It's actually a horrific humanitarian crisis as well.
So I want to get to Texas right now, Molly, because what we covered here, as we showed earlier and Garrett enlightened us on, these votes are coming into the second round, and then that will bring us maybe to the third round. Walk us through the implications here of this redistricting map potential.
Well, it's fascinating to see the eyes of the country looking at Texas. We think about gerrymandering. This is something that's been happening throughout U.S. history since the founding of the country, really. The word gerrymandering goes way back to Massachusetts, to an old Governor Eldridge Gerry. And this today is not unique to Texas. Gerrymandering, the redrawing of lines, happens very often. The challenge here, and what Democrats are pushing back against, is that they think that this is, one, inspired by Trump, which I think is potentially why they've been set off to the degree that they have, and the effort to go to stop it, where Democrats fled briefly. They couldn't really stop this, and that's why we're watching the process continue forward, but went around the country, essentially going to friendly governors from blue states, arguing that they can turn this into really a nationwide issue, and that blue states could try to counter this. So there's a lot going on nationally, making this far more than just something that affects Texas, the Texas voters, people that could be in these districts that may potentially be redrawn. The Democrats on the ground there in Texas are watching this in particular because they're arguing that they're going to lose seats, that ultimately this could result in Texas gaining up to 5 additional Republican House seats in the upcoming midterms. But this type of challenge goes on around the country, not just every 10 years. There are current challenges right now. The Brennan Center for Justice has been tracking this. There are a multitude of states that have lawsuits related to measures and redrawing. But this particular thing that's happening on the ground in Texas is fascinating. And we're just kind of midway through the ultimate process. The Republicans are likely to get their way here. That is the expected outcome of this, just merely because they do have the power on the ground there in Texas right now.
So, Lisa, Molly mentioned the courts and the lawsuits, and the Supreme Court has held that this is squarely within state courts to adjudicate. We know, obviously, there's some federal acts that apply, but the reality is that when you gerrymander based on partisanship, that is lawful. It's when it's done based on race or allegations of race, if proven, that makes it unconstitutional. Now, all of this is against the rubric that these Democrats, the reason the vote's today is because they weren't here earlier, right? And all of these guys fled to a blue-friendly state where a lot of Texans argued you are making a national spectacle at lawmakers that are now expressing their frustrations with this redistricting.
Yeah, absolutely. And to Molly's point, gerrymandering goes back to 1812 with Governor Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts because he created a district that looked like a salamander. In New York, in 2024, they redistricted. It was a court order, but they did a mid-decade redistricting. Part of this for Texas is because millions of people have migrated there since the 2020 census. That's in a large part, you've got Governor Gavin Newsom to blame because a lot of those people came from the state of California because of his poor leadership there. But also, I interviewed Hans von Spakovsky. He's a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. And he told me this, which I think a lot of people are missing in this overall conversation, that in early July, the U.S. Justice Department sent a letter to Texas warning them that 4 of the congressional districts they had put together in 2021 were unconstitutional racial gerrymandering. That stemmed from a decision at the end of last year under the prior administration from the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. So it was a court decision that sort of spurred the changes that needed to take place in the state of Texas. So I think that part of it has also been misrepresented by the media, which is not shocking.
And I think a big reason why you're seeing so much Democrat outrage over redistricting right now is because, just frankly, although both parties have done a lot of redistricting in various states, Democrats have done a much better job to maximize their votes. In Illinois, they have basically made it impossible to be elected as a Republican. In Massachusetts, there are no elected Republicans, even though close to 40% of the state voted for Donald Trump last year. So Democrats have kind of done as much as is possible to do with redistricting, whereas Republicans actually could do much more. So they're making this a big issue because they're freaking out about how many more seats could be obtained if other states did what Texas is doing as well, whereas they don't really have much room to operate to increase their congressional districts.
And Jeremy, that was exactly the argument by some Republicans when, for example, Governor Gavin Newsom joined in the fray and said, we're going to fight fire with fire. And Republicans were sort of like, you already have. That's the whole point. You've been cheating this entire time. And now we are doing it. GOP is doing it lawfully, not cheating. And the Democrats are having a meltdown.
Yeah, I mean, there's a right and a wrong way to do this. And as you mentioned, there are lawful ways to go about this. And a lot of times you actually have election law attorneys that go through and walk the legislature through the entire process to make sure it's all above board. So a lot of these cases that you see, this is racial gerrymandering. I mean, of course, they're going to try that. The left is going to try that. But honestly, a lot of these attorneys are paying very close attention to the way these maps are drawn. They're making sure that the process that happens is done the right way. And I've seen every indication from Texas that's the policy that they're following. I know back in Georgia, my home state, that's how we do things. And so hopefully we'll see a good result at the end of this.
And I'm sorry. There's just another really interesting thing about the racial issue. That comes from civil rights laws decades ago. But the New York Times today reported just how many inroads have been made with various racial groups and the GOP. And so you're seeing it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens here. White people used to be the only group that didn't vote, like one race, one party. But as the GOP does so much better with different racial groups, that will also make it harder for Democrats to fight redistricting based solely on racial grounds. That's the thing. So, Molly, the critics in Texas were arguing, and I remember reading one of the stated protests. They said, now there will be a district where conservative Hispanics and conservative white people will outweigh Democrat Hispanics. And the whole point was that's what we saw reflected in 2024. Like, that's an accurate portrayal of that demographics voting parties of that time. The whole point is it wasn't about race. And it seems to me that the Democrats are approaching this in a very stale, antiquated lens of assuming based on someone's skin color, they're going to vote a certain way and totally ignoring the variables and all of the varied votes, most of whom went to Trump there.
I think the idea may be more of a legal strategy, though, where they're eyeing something that can be taken to court. That, it has to fit a certain aspect of the law to fit and get to a courtroom, which may be the next goal in this particular case. That appears to be where this road is headed, since we know the ultimate outcome of the vote is likely to lean where Republicans want it to go. I spoke a moment ago about the Brennan Center for Justice. The big map they have tracks litigation all across the country related to redistricting. And right now, there are some 90 different cases. 28 states have been challenged. This is just as of July 25th, 2025. So this is a really big map. And the vast majority of the cases, 72 out of 90, seek changes to maps originally drawn under single-party control in the redistricting process. So as we see in given states around the country, if a certain party is in the majority, you may see a more likely that the drawing that happens in that 10-year period or wherever the period of redrawing happens may favor that particular party that happens to be in power at that point in time. And then a revolving cycle continues.
Well, it's also interesting because Democrats seem to be wanting to start a redistricting arms race that they're not going to be able to finish, right? Because even if you look at the state of California, because they have an independent commission with their redistricting, Governor Gavin Newsom has to call a special counsel this November. It could cost upwards of $200 million. Is that really something that California voters think is worthwhile? Also, Punchbowl News recently reported that Republicans could pick up at least a dozen seats in some of these red states. You look at Ohio, they have a state ordered, they have to redistrict ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. Well, guess what? Republicans control Ohio. And then also, if you look at a lot of these blue states, they either have independent commissions or bipartisan commissions, or they just don't have the votes to get it done. So this is an arms race that they seem to want, but they really shouldn't.
Well, and you're seeing that so much, too, with so many different aspects of election administration. Democrats loved mail-out balloting because they could capture all these votes from groups that were less likely to vote on Election Day. But this New York Times story I was referencing was about how all of those Democrat efforts to get out the vote using mail-out balloting aren't working so well as more and more minority and other groups are voting Republican. It is an arms race, and you have to play with the laws as they are given. And I just have to point out that Brennan Center, as the name suggests, is they're very interested in election administration, and they're usually interested in it in a pretty partisan way because they're a very left-wing group named after that left-wing lion of the Supreme Court, Justice Brennan. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, well, really interesting, too, the Democrats have a threefold issue. It's as Molly pointed out, the weakening of race as an indicator of the way that you vote. That was supposed to be their future. The Democrat Party was supposed to seal their future by always about race-based politics, identity politics. And now race is, as we've seen with President Trump, getting more black votes than any Republican in a very long time. You see that they're losing that. The second thing they're losing is these blue states are just so mismanaged that now we're seeing people are flooding to red states. So now it really benefits states like Texas when they're redrawing their maps. And then thirdly, I just love this, is that Republicans are finally getting smart to the way we should do these things and the process that goes about it. Democrats have been organized on this for so long. All over in New York, Illinois, they have whole, redistricting plans that start years in advance. Finally, we're seeing red states, Republican-led legislatures getting smart to this, learning how to do this on the right as well.
Well, and also, you just point out that it's ridiculous. So part of the argument from the left, they're saying that Republicans in Texas are doing this because it's coming from a point of weakness, because they're worried about the midterm elections. I'll just remind them that Republicans, President Trump just won the popular vote in 2024, and Republicans control both bodies of Congress. They're also heading in to the midterms with more money. The numbers aren't really there for the Democrats right now. And then beyond that, there's a sense of irony in all of this, considering the fact that these are the same people who tried to kick Trump off the ballot during the last election, tried to jail him, who weaponized government against him in unprecedented ways. So just a lot of points of hypocrisy and irony there.
For the final question and point, Molly, your take on the narrative as it shifts. So what I'm seeing in this administration is constant series of winning in the courts that are affirming that all of these policies and EOs are indeed constitutional. And when you add that into the layer that, for example, Molly mentioned, Massachusetts, 0 Republican representatives, even though 40% voted for Trump. Are what we've seen, is this the beginning of a sea change? Is this something that you think will all occur during this administration, where on the other side, we're all going to be spit out actually finally equitable of parties? Or do you think that it's going to take a few more years for the GOP to really secure an accurate representation?
I think what's happening now is this is a wake-up call, people all across America. This is sort of the sausage being made, the stuff that people don't pay a lot of attention to. And now you're seeing people like Gavin Newsom bringing this also on the other side of the aisle to the national front. So I think we may see a lot more attention paid to the gerrymandering and the redistricting that doesn't get the attention that perhaps it deserves, and really does affect people in their individual districts and who they have the opportunity to vote for, who would ultimately get elected. When it comes to Massachusetts, I think people feel like it's a lost cause as far as red contenders are. But that was disproven, 15 some years roughly, when Scott Brown won the surprise Senate upset, drove his brown pickup truck all across the state of Massachusetts and won this race. There are a lot of independents in Massachusetts that I think sometimes feel a bit overlooked. And yes, the Republicans make up the minority when it comes to the voters. But in Massachusetts, there is this, purple core that does exist and could be appealed to. And we may see that. Ooh, Lisa wants in. Go ahead, Lisa.
No, I was going to say 15 years ago. I feel old.
I think it was 2010, right?
All right, guys. Well, as this develops all morning, we'll be taking you in and out, of course.
Well, we already know that the Republican Party won, so yeah. Always. Thank you.
President Trump blasting his personal playlist while testing out the speakers at the freshly renovated Rose Garden. And that kind of showman flair is part of his trademark identity. It stands in sharp contrast to the Democrats, who are struggling with an identity crisis. One of the Obama podcast bros said he had to admit his party doesn't have much beyond opposing the president.
The debates that happen in the upcoming primaries will be not just a way we figure out where we want to go, but the debate itself will be instructive to people watching it about what the Democratic Party stands for. How do we figure out what we stand for? We know Democrats are against Trump, but what are they for? What are they for? People said that about Hillary. They said it about Kamala. They say about all kinds of Democrats. Well, if you give a bunch of policy addresses and then a reporter asks you while you're passing him on your way out, what do you think about Donald Trump? That's the news. The news is about Trump. And so Trump sucks up a lot of oxygen that's difficult to contend with.
So a party with no clear identity, and it shows. The New York Times found that Democrats have lost 2 million registered voters since 2020, while Republicans gained 2.4 million. They are also bleeding cash, the Democrats are. By the end of June, the RNC had $80 million on hand. Compare that to $15 million for the DNC. Vice President J.D. Vance had some advice for the opposition during a sit-down with Laura Ingraham that airs tonight at 7.
You've got to be yourself. You've actually got to talk to people honestly about the issues. I don't think it's that complicated. Don't be a crazy person. Be authentic. If the Democrats did that, they'd do a hell of a lot better.
Years ago, Ed Gillespie taught me to pay attention to voter registration numbers. And when I read that New York Times piece today, I couldn't believe it, Kellyanne. They're bleeding everywhere across the board.
Yes, in the 30 states that track voter registration, Dana, the Democrats have lost in all 30. That's pretty remarkable. It's not a red state. It's not a purple state. It's everywhere. And the adjunct to that is we have more and more Americans choosing to register Republican. That's different than Democrats losing to, say, so-called unaffiliated or independent. If you say, I'm a Republican, you're taking that red hat off the hook. You're putting your vote in the water. You're very proud. I see Trump 2028 signs everywhere. And Vice President Vance is absolutely right. You have to be yourself. But the Democrats are being themselves. That's how they got here. Mm-hmm. They are absolutely being themselves. And they have screwed it up on the issues over time. It's showing in the registration numbers. Look, I think that the modern Democratic Party is collapsing. It's hemorrhaging voters, but it's also broke It's bereft of ideas. It's not fun. I think the guy with the joy on the job is Donald Trump. You know, Dana, for every other issue set going back and forth between the two parties in terms of who has an advantage, the one the Democrats owned for a very long time was sort of the culture and technology and the cool. This is the guy with swagger. He's right there. He's having a blast. He's now doing in the Rose Garden what he does in Mar-a-Lago. Any of us who have dinner with him witness that. He plays the music. He plays it loudly. People love it. And who's going to complain? His neighbors are Scott Bessent at Treasury. Right. The neighbors aren't going to complain about the music coming out of the house. What he's done in the Rose Garden is the ultimate get off my lawn to the left. And I feel for the Democratic Party, until they actually get their own outsider. And look at Gavin Newsom. He tried to do this, was it a radio show or podcast, whatever he tried to do. Now he's busy trolling on social media, and it's cringe, it's falling flat. I'm sure they'll come after me now, who cares? Because Donald Trump is one of one. Only he can do what he's done with social media, with podcasts, in the way he's done it. 900 rallies and counting. The thing that he does that we all miss and don't talk enough about is he just works harder than everyone else. But the joy on the job is the key. The Democrats are race baiting, they're bitter, they're angry, and now they got this internecine warfare where they're fighting with each other.
If he comes after you, maybe he'll go after Joe Scarborough too, because he said the same thing. The joy is, you can work hard and still be joyous in your job. You show it every day, Greg.
That is so true, Dana, and I'm glad you finally acknowledged it and we get past that bitterness that we've had for many years. It is amazing when you think about it that you can lose your identity after spending decades on identity. The one thing that you made the priority, and after it's all said and done, you don't have one. It tells you, and I said it before, identity policies were always a sham. And were meant to actually sap you of your real individuality for labels that you tick to put yourself in manageable boxes so people like Obama's insiders could understand you. You tell me you're LGBTQ, LMNOP, you tell me nothing about you. The Dems party is a collection of zeros now because they didn't create their own individual identity. They didn't create their own ideas. You painted this house with a coat of identity, and Trump came and his rain washed it all away. And now we see what it is. There's nothing there. You know, Carville did say, you know, it'd be really good to get an outsider. But what is a nominee without popular sentiment, ideas, or policies? It's just a shell. I mean, it did work with, you know, you took a feeble, incoherent jackass like Joe Biden and you poured all this progressivism down his throat and told everybody he was a moderate. But like the Doobie Brothers said, we won't get fooled again. So.
That was the Who.
I know. The Dems, you can't be fun when everything fun became evil. You know, who wants to be around someone who takes every joke literally and claims it's worse than violence? You canceled fun on behalf of the activist class. The old Ben Shapiro line, you know, it's facts, not feelings. It's now fun, not feelings. But the Dems became the party of victims, and victims never succeed because they blame their failures on other people. And you can't actually learn from a failure and succeed if you don't own your own failures.
You brought up James Carville. Let's listen to a little bit of that. He was on with Jesse last night.
I don't think the party's in danger of collapse.
Do the Democrats, James, do the Democrats need a daddy?
We need a presidential nominee. You're exactly right. We will not have a unified message in our party until the 2028 election. We have tons of really strong candidates, and I think we're going to be fine. I think we're going to romp and stomp in 2026.
Do you think you believe that?
Well, Dana, they ran two moms and a grandpa, and they need to run a daddy. The problem is there's no dads in the party. And what, Jessica? In order to have masculine policies, you need to live your life as a man. You need to live a life of action, and you have to live it outdoors. And the first step is having your own compound. Every presidential candidate or president needs their home base, right? Trump had Trump Tower. He's got his golf courses. He's got the White House now. You call people in, you hold court, you control everything. That's what they need. Now, I don't know why they don't have that. Maybe they're ashamed of it. Gavin Newsom has a vineyard. Why doesn't he bring in the press to his vineyard and look beautiful outside with all the grapes? That's how you do it. Americans love to drink wine. Newsflash, Newsom, go to the vineyard, hold a press conference, and act like you're a man of the people. Don't be ashamed of it. Trump does press conferences in front of billion-dollar buildings with his name on it. Kenny Bunkport, does that ring a bell? How about the Bush Ranch? How about the Reagan Ranch? You do that, you show the American people you know how to work. And then you show them you're a man of leisure. Because if I see another press conference with a mariachi band in front of a Capitol with a stupid microphone and paid shills that hold signs that they didn't write, I'm going to shoot myself in the head.
Oh, God.
Democrats have to go out there and seize power the way Trump did. Take it back and then give it to the people. Say, I'm going to give you a real civilization where you're going to have a house, a family, and security. That's all people care about. And if you can't...
Jesse, relax, man. Stop giving out the sauce, man. You got to let him fail in peace. Let him fail in peace, Jesse. Jeez, relax. All right, here we go. Hannity.
Welcome to Hannity and breaking tonight. It is official. The Texas House has approved a new congressional map, which could net Republicans up to 5 additional seats in the very important midterm elections in 2026. And if Democrats turn this into a nationwide redistricting fight, which I hope they do, they will lose badly, as there is little to nothing left for them to gerrymander in blue states. And congratulations to Governor Greg Abbott. A job well done. We'll have more on that straight ahead tonight. Also, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, our friend, just diagnosed one of the worst political problems in D.C. Right on the money. Take a look.
So we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies that all need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old.
Now, today, some of those ultra-privileged hippies were not happy to see members of the Trump administration in Union Station. They are deeply appalled by the president's efforts to keep them safe and secure. We got that exchange coming up. But we begin tonight in the beautiful state of California. If you want a glimpse into what America would become if a radical Democrat wins the White House, pay very close attention. Despite what is a vast, stunning natural resources in California, great weather, beautiful geography, beautiful oceans. The Golden State has become totally unlivable for so many Americans. After years of Democratic one-party rule, Californians, look at these numbers. They are fleeing the state in droves with the largest net migration in the entire country. It even recently lost a congressional seat for the first time ever and is projected to lose at least 4 more seats by 2030. So let us be clear. The state's radical Democratic agenda, led by our old friend Gavin Newsom, is to blame for all of this. Unfortunately, that might be news to Gavin. His attention seems to be elsewhere, embarrassing himself, running for president. In fact, he's now so totally fixated and focused on doing whatever he can do to win his party's 2028 nomination. It's like he changes every single hour of every day, and frankly, it's getting hard to watch. Even morning liberal Joe agrees with me. Now, currently, he and his social media team, they are busy trying to mock President Trump on X by posting messages in all caps. He's trying to pretend to be Donald Trump. Gavin is also attacking Fox News hosts. He's trying to bait conservatives into social media fights. He's actually referred to our own Tomi Lahren account as Yelp for toilets. Gee, very clever and funny. She'll join us in a moment to respond. Gavin, look, I know Gavin. In person, he can be a very likable guy. I know he's slick. I got it. I've got his number. But unfortunately, it is his radical policies. That's where the disaster is for him. Pretending to be President Trump is not only embarrassing, it will not negate the disastrous policies and positions and the horrible state that California is in. Now, that includes Gavin's campaign to woo conservatives. First, he was going to be a podcaster and interview Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk. That didn't work out after he got caught, of course, in an embarrassing lie, actually one after another. Take a look.
The Latinx stuff that, by the way, not one person ever in my office has ever used the word Latinx.
So can we finally put that to bed?
Yeah,
we agree?
But where did that even
No more Latinx, everybody.
Well, I just didn't even know where it came from. I'm like, what are people talking about? I hope we can really paint a picture in terms of our consciousness of how impactful this has been on the Latinx community. About 3/4 of renters in the state that have fallen behind in rent, represented in the Latino and African American community.
Having news come, baby.
Communities. You've got politicians that are banning not assault rifles, but the word Latinx. They're not even serious.
And it gets worse from there. Now, Gavin, you're not going to listen to me, but maybe you'll consider focusing on your day job, maybe help end crime, homelessness, lower taxes. People in your state are way overtaxed. Help the people in the Pacific Palisades rebuild. Maybe have some water in the hydrants and the reservoir. Sadly, everything for Newsom is just a political stunt or a political game. His end goal is he thinks this might make him president. He's more Trump-like, but he's not Trump. It's not making life better for people in California. A huge political miscalculation, but Gavin doesn't listen to me. His views as governor have changed year after year. Based on polling and trends, his views will also change during any Democratic primary. If nominated, his views will likely change yet again during a general election, but his record will forever haunt him. The country will be faced with the question, if he's the nominee, do you want America to become California? He just spent, the last several weeks bashing President Trump over the Texas redistricting fight while threatening to gerrymander his own state even more. Not that there's much left to gerrymander. Of course, this very public political battle doesn't help the people of California at all. It doesn't even help the Democratic Party. Helps nobody. It hurts Gavin Newsom. It's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for him. But Gavin Newsom doesn't care. His sole focus appears to be his own political career on the national stage. Now, if you want to have a job, a new job, what's the best way to get a promotion? Simple. Be great at your current job. And the really sad part is now California is getting left in the dust. When you cut through all the clutter and all the gimmicks and all the performative stunts and all the transformations, Gavin the podcaster, Gavin acting like Trump, this is Newsom's record. That will be at the heart of any campaign he runs in the future, should he ever run. Anyway, assuming he does run for president. Let's start with something he's really sensitive about, and that is his many failures surrounding horrific wildfires in Southern California. After all, shouldn't the buck stop with the governor? On January 7th, firefighters, they showed up to protect their communities bravely, only to discover that there was no water. The state's water supply had been totally mismanaged. A key reservoir was empty. Critical fire hydrants were non-operational, no water in them. As a result, entire neighborhoods burned to the ground all the way to the ocean. Look at this disaster. And according to the LA Times, nearly 13,000 households were displaced from the sky. All you could see was block after block after block. Look at this disaster of charred rubble. And remember, wildfires, Santa Ana winds, California. I did live in Southern California for 5 years. All of it is predictable, a predictable event. You can prepare for that. And here's where things get much worse. Out of the thousands and thousands of homes that were burned to the ground, only 145 successfully receiving permits to rebuild. More than 7 months later, and this is just the process to begin construction, not even rebuilding your home. According to one developer, quote, building a house in L.A. can mean filing paperwork with a half a dozen or more government agencies. Most homeowners haven't even been able to start this process because 7 months after the fire, California officials have yet to finalize all the rules and regulations surrounding rebuilding efforts. And anyway, here is more of Gavin's record. And if you want America to be California, then guess what? This is what America would look like if a radical Democrat is elected. As governor of California, he is home to it has the largest homeless population in the entire country, far worse, for example, than my free state of Florida, both in terms of sheer numbers and per capita. In every major city across the state, sidewalks, they're lined with tents, open-air drug use, public defecation, urination. Look at your screen. Right on this here on this program during his debate with Gavin Newsom, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Remember, he pulled out that San Francisco poop map, charting out all of the sightings of human waste in the city, in the streets. As you can see, the map is almost all brown. Now, this is a massive failure from a state that collects more taxes than any other state in the country. Look at your screen, comparing California's tax rates, the income tax rate. It is the highest highest in the country. Sales tax rate, also the highest in the country. Corporate tax rate, the 6th highest in the country. The state's gas tax is by far the highest in the country, and it just went up again in 2025. Now, instead of solving these real problems, improving the state of California as governor, he's choosing to spend his days doing a ridiculous, inauthentic, cheap imitation of President Trump without success after failing as a podcaster who wants to get along with conservatives. And meanwhile, California's violent crime rate is way above the national average, more than double the rate in my free state of Florida. So where are all the Golden State's tax dollars going? Here's just one egregious example. Take a look.
We have an actual number of illegal immigrant health care that the state taxpayers are covering in this year's budget.
Guadalupe Manriquez with the California Department of Finance. So in the current year, to cover undocumented individuals in Medi-Cal, we're spending $9.5 billion total funds.
So it's not the $6 billion that people continue to talk about in the media. It's $9.5 billion.
Was a Budget Act number. This is a revised number based on the governor's budget updated estimates.
Now, the governor has been luring unvetted illegal immigrants to his sanctuary state for years with protections, generous handouts. And why doesn't California keep statistics of illegal immigrant crime in that state?
No, they don't.
How many innocent Californians have been murdered and raped and victims of violent crime because of these insane aid and abetting policies? And in case you're wondering, California, the highest tax state in the country, is now facing a $10+ billion budget deficit. How's that possible? So, Gavin, keep playing make-believe Donald Trump and let your state suffer. And sadly, we see the same thing in almost every other deep blue state. Americans, they've had enough. Look at the New York Times report. Quote, the Democratic Party faces a voter registration crisis. The party is bleeding support beyond the ballot box. A new analysis shows, look at the graph, in all red, blue states and battleground states, the Democratic Party is losing registered supporters dramatically between 20 and 24. They lost 2.1 million voters. Republicans gained 2.4 million for a net gain of 4.5 million Republicans. So in my humble, advice to Gavin, he won't listen to me. He used to like me. Not sure what happened. I have a point. Results matter. A new performative, confrontational style. Maybe it wins you points with the loony radical base in your party, but America is not going to vote for that record. It's not going to fix.
Okay, so when the commander-in-chief, the 45th, now the 47th president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, calls Gavin Newsom, in my mind, I'm saying, you know what, maybe you shouldn't call Gavin Newsom. However, when I watched the video when LA was on fire, okay, they had no water in their fire hydrants, in the Palisades, okay? And this guy got on national television and he says, it's not my problem. Wow. So it's not your problem that you don't have water in your fire hydrant. That's when I concluded that, you know what, maybe he is Gavin Newsom for real. What in the world? In your state, you don't have water in the fire hydrant, and you're saying, it's not my problem. Well, we've got to ask.
The very real exodus from your state and from other Democratic states. And maybe you should focus on making people's lives better in your state. Hey, Sean Hannity.
No, he can't do that. No, he can't. Come on. He wants to be the president of the United States.
Fox News alert. Big Intel just got doged. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is taking a hatchet to her own office. She says our spy agencies are bloated, too political, and focusing on all the wrong things. So she's slashing $700 million, along with up to 40% of the workforce, and calling what's left ODNI 2.0. Tulsi Gabbard joins me now. So what moved you to reinvent this office?
As you know, Jesse, this organization, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, was created 20 years ago in the wake of the egregious and strategic intelligence failures around the Islamist terrorist attack on 9/11 in our country. And this office was created by Congress to get after those problems, to make sure that there is one independent body providing that oversight over the intelligence community, integrating intelligence, making sure that the left hand is sharing information with the right hand, and fundamentally and most importantly, ensuring that the intelligence that is being provided to the President of the United States is timely, it is relevant, and it is apolitical, objective. That he is actually getting the information he needs to make the critical decisions that he makes every single day. Fast forward to where we are today. ODNI has more than doubled in size. It is bloated with bureaucracy. It is rife with politicization, weaponization, the very thing that it was created to try to prevent and get after. And unfortunately, it has failed to meet its mandate. And so this launch today of ODNI 2.0, as you said, we will save taxpayers more than $700 million every year, cutting the organization by over 40% and making sure that those who are working at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence are aggressively getting after our core mission, which is really ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people.
So you're saying when you got in there, you saw them not synthesizing and sharing intelligence as they should. They were mostly hatchet men for the left and sabotaging people?
You know, sometimes they were sharing, sometimes good work was being done, but too often I was seeing, for example, pockets within the ODNI where partisan political elements were tucked away in the hopes that no one would see their work or...
Man, I just got to say this, man. Look, before we keep going, I just got to say this. DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, a former Democrat, now a Republican, Tulsi Gabbard. She's, happily married. But I gotta say this, yo. This is definitely the most beautiful DNA we've ever had. Woo! This lady is beautiful. Here we go.
See what actions they were taking, and in some cases, very directly. And again, this is after I got in this office, after President Trump was inaugurated, inserting their own partisan views and opinions into intelligence documents. Obviously, you've seen what we've released over the last several weeks of people like Obama's DNI James Clapper and CIA Director John Brennan inserting and politicizing, weaponizing, manufacturing an intelligence document for purely political reasons. This kind of thing, unfortunately, still exists within the intelligence community. The changes that I'm making at ODNI is just the very first step to bring about an end to this dangerous politicization of intelligence that ultimately is undermining our national security and our republic, and make sure that the intelligence community is staying focused on its core mission, and then beginning through transparency and accountability to start to earn the trust of the American people that's been broken for a very, very long time.
Director, we're seeing that you got rid of the foreign malign influencer center. Well, first of all, what was that? And did they resist?
Well, here's what's interesting, Jesse, is this was created under the Biden administration. And ultimately, it has been used, and this is documented, there's documented evidence of this, is that it was essentially used as a means to censor Americans' free speech. Calling it, hey, you're spreading disinformation. This center was going and working with different social media companies, saying, well, this is disinformation or misinformation. We have to censor these dissenting voices who are being critical of the then Biden administration. So that's one example of some of the others, once again, who are not only not conducting our core national security mission, but actually existing as a means to politicize intelligence and, in this case, censor free speech of Americans, which is in direct contradiction and undermining of our fundamental constitutional rights.
Well, I'm sure the president's very happy about this, not only because you're kind of rooting out the garbage, but saving almost $1 billion is pretty useful when you're in this much debt. Director Gabbard, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jesse.
Yeah, I could definitely watch her talk all day. I'll tell you that much. I'll tell you that much. All right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Thank you for tuning in, everybody.
Democrats are living in a broken home. Daddy got cooed and Mamala left for vacation and never came home. So the house is a mess and the roof's starting to cave in.
My brother's a Democrat. I don't know why, but he is. My father was a Democrat. I know exactly why he was, but his party doesn't exist anymore. Now it's the left arguing for a cultural elite. No Democrat would have argued for open borders. You know, none of this. My father would have done none of this.
Cuomo's looking for a new home, and there just happens to be a big, beautiful house right across the street. It has a gold patio, marble trim, a big, beautiful flagpole, and great surround sound. DJ Donnie T was just testing it. It's the hottest house on the block, and everyone's looking to make the move. The New York Times says in just 4 years, over 4.5 million Democrats packed their bags and moved to a home with a daddy.
New reporting in the Times this morning, just broke a short time ago, of the 30 states that track voter registration, Democrats lost ground to Republicans in every single one.
The New York Times says this isn't just a dip, it's a potential death spiral for the Democratic Party. For the ones who haven't flocked, they're acting like runaway kids, screaming, stomping, and they won't come back to their collapsing house. Texas Democrats tried shacking up with Uncle JB back in Chicago. The house was nice, but JB back ribs wasn't generous with the leftovers. Grandma Nancy broke her hip, so they're not staying there. So they came back home to Texas. And to make sure they wouldn't flee again, the governor gave them a 24/7 escort service. One Texas rep said she wasn't going home. She locked herself on the House floor and threw a slumber party. She spent the night there and told MSNBC she was ready to get down and dirty.
Say, take that high road. Well, you know, that high road has crumbled.
I feel you,
We're
bro.
on a dirt road, and we're going to meet them on that dirt road and get down and dirty just like they are. And so my fellow Democrats are ready to continue the fight with the grit that is necessary to challenge the oppressor.
At first, she was all by herself, but then she poked her head out and made it a girls' night.
Let her out. Let her out.
Can y'all help me
Let her out.
Mama has been away, but she called to tell her a bedtime story.
You just remember when you're in those rooms and it feels like you're the only one there, we are all in that room with you. And so any moment where you feel alone, you do not feel alone. You've got to know we are all there with you, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All
Strong.
right, my dear.
Thank you.
Strong what? Strong what? Strong. Strong. Girl power. Strong. What are you doing, bro?
It's getting strong.
Yes.
Okay, I'll see you later.
All right, take care.
You can reach out anytime. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris.
No,
Oh,
former.
my goodness.
Former vice president.
Then
And
Gavin
borders are.
called, but she was
Then they
camping
went to
out
the
in the
border.
bathroom.
On the floor right now. I'm still under house arrest. I'm not free to leave. In fact, I am confined in the bathroom.
Well, thank you. My blood boils. I physiologically went like this when you started talking. Remind me where you are. The fact you're in a restroom. The fact that this is actually happening in the United States of America.
The Texas fleabagger boarded up the bathroom, brought a laptop, started Zooming with the governor of California while people were knocking on the door like, hey, Nicole, get out. We got to go.
Sorry, I have to leave. They said it's a felony for me to do this. Apparently, I can't be on the floor or in the bathroom. Well, you told me I was only allowed to be here in the bathroom. No, hang on. Bye, everybody. I've got to go.
Democrats have lost control of their House. The crazy old uncle of the party's weighing in. He says maybe it's time for a real man. Do the Democrats need a daddy?
They do.
We need a presidential nominee. You're exactly right. We will not have a unified message in our party until the 2028 election. We have tons of really strong candidates.
Democrats got creamed running 2 moms and a grandpa, and now they want a daddy. And there's one guy shining his shoes for the father-daughter dance.
Yes, I've changed. The facts have changed. We need to change, and we need to stand up to this authoritarian. This guy is an invasive species. So yes, we're going to punch back. And yes, we're going to punch back with the full weight of the 4th largest economy in the world.
Democrats don't even want mom back in the house.
The fact is, the problem the Democrat have is they always point the finger at Trump. Forget about Trump. Trump is not your problem. Focus on your duty to the American people. Focus on your promise to the American people. Ask the American people what they want and fulfill on that. That's what you have to do. Do your job. That's all you have to do to actually win Trump. You just have to do your job and do it exceptionally well. Because this man is doing his job. Ending wars, bringing back manufacturing, closing the border. So I don't get what you guys are talking about saying, well, we gotta stop Trump. What are you stopping Trump for? He was elected to be the 47th president of the United States. We gotta stop Trump. What about the American people that voted you to be the governor of California? What are you doing for them? Focus on those people. Forget about Trump. And everybody else talking about Trump, like the congressmen and women, just focus on your constituent. Like, forget about Trump. You keep making Trump way more powerful every time you focus on Trump. Because he's going to absorb all of that power and then pounce on you.
A poll says California Democrats prefer Newsom over Kamala, 25 to 19%. They think he's the fun dad.
In politics, especially if you're thinking of entering in 2028, it's all about generating attention. And so far, Gavin Newsom has done a good job at generating attention.
Stephen A. likes his hair gel.
Let's call it what it is. Say this about Gavin Newsom. The brother looks presidential. I mean, listen, you know, I don't look at men that way. That's just not my flavor. But the brother does look good in the blue suit. I mean, he looks very presidential. He really, really does. Hair slicked back. Pat Riley might be jealous. Good looking dude, excellent speaker, can articulate his thoughts clearly, highly intelligent, knows the issues, knows how to fight, and is willing to take on Trump.
Gavin's trying to be the cool dad of the block and get his party to flock back. His press accounts have been calling Trump tiny hands and putting JD on blast. Look at me in high school, he said. JD's got to have a better picture than that, though. They called Greg a low-rated garbage man, said he seldom watches, but, quote, when I do, I marvel at the fake laughter on the show. It sounds like a bad laugh machine. Actually, I agree with that. They're even name-calling Perino. Dana Ding Dong Perino, never heard of her until today, is melting down because of me, Gavin C. Newsom. Fox hates that I'm America's most favorite governor, ratings king, saving America, while Trump can't even conquer the big stairs on Air Force One anymore.
This guy is trying to be Trump.
Thank you for your attention to this matter. They're even putting out tweets about Kid Rock. Has anyone noticed that since I said I hate Kid Rock, he's no longer hot?
Man, this guy is trying to be Trump so bad. Trump is Gavin Newsom's mentor. This is just evident right here. All of his tweets are exactly like the commander-in-chief. Look, all caps lock. Like, what in the world? Nicknames, trying to be Trump so bad instead of you to focus on your people and save California and actually give these people who lost their homes to the fire a building permit. Start building your homes. You're wasting time on Twitter or X.
It's actually kind of funny. His press account also sharing AI shots of him looking jacked. Newsom's flexing hard.
what that does for our side, it fires us up. It gets us going. These memes of you riding a velociraptor with like a 12-pack and 2 freaking rifles in your hand.
Oh, I know. I'm in good shape. How about my bicep?
I bet you could do a real pull-up on like headsets and the other.
Right.
Yeah.
I really like my biceps, though. I like the fact that I'm in that kind of good shape.
Did you know that you also circumnavigated the globe?
Finally, some untouched photos of me. There you go. Back to, look, I've been legit, right? You like the biceps?
You know what?
That's a real photo, by the way. This has not been touched.
Right, like it's
Not
really
a damn
not
part
that
of that
far
was
off.
touched.
Maybe Newsom should try the Pete Bobby challenge. 100 push-ups, 50 pull-ups in 10 minutes. Let's see what he's got. Because last time we looked, he was knocking down Chinese kids like bowling pins.
I'm getting old. I got to work on my balance. When you get shots in, there's still a little fish. Still got a little left. See you guys. Tell everyone I didn't miss a
Just like Joe, baby. Just like Joe. Okay. It's the same. Just like Joe.
Last time we looked, he was knocking down Chinese kids like bowling pins.
I'm getting old. I got to work on my balance. When you get shots in, there's still a little fish. Still got a little left. See you guys. Tell everyone I didn't miss a shot.
Kind of have a nice handle, all right. The difference is Trump writes his own tweets. Gavin can't even get it up himself. People on his side hate it.
You can see the Democrats are trying to find their footing, and it's quite embarrassing, actually. I mean, Gavin Newsom, I mean, have you seen what he's doing online?
Get out and listen to what people really want, what people really need, the kinds of, and then draft solutions around it as opposed to listening to yourself.
Does Gavin have big dad energy? Maybe in one way he does.
If you can't trust Gavin with his best friend's wife, how can you trust him with your state?
Gavin's a bad daddy. Big business wants a divorce. Over 300 businesses have left California under Newsom. He's even beefing with Bed Bath & Beyond. He called the company irrelevant. Gavin buys his sheets from Bloomie's. Is Daddy's house even all that? It keeps catching on fire, and there's homeless on the patio. Newsom's masquerading as a swashbuckling meme lord to mock Trump and get attention on Twitter. But McCarthy says he just goes where the wind blows.
There's no principle behind him. He's a chameleon. He'll change as the weeks go by. He wants to be president, and he thinks this is his road.
Trump's always been the same guy. He doesn't need to reinvent himself to win. Watch, soon Gavin's going to start uncrossing his legs and go take his boat out onto the bay. Now, if I were Newsom, I'd just own it. I'd post up at my vineyard. I'd invite the press over, open some bottles of wine, get everyone so lit they'd forget how bad my state is. Needles on the floor, riots in the street. Can you be a daddy if you can't even get your own house in order? Click here to subscribe to the Fox News.
All right, so like I always say, Marco Rubio is absolutely articulate, a skillful communicator. Like I've said multiple times, and I've said here that he is my first choice. However, that doesn't take away the fact that J.D. Vance is doing a great job as well. We just got to say the facts. That man right there, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, is doing great work. It is just the truth. You might not like him for some reason, but just like not everybody loves Trump, but that doesn't mean that he's not doing great work. So yeah, Marco Rubio is my first choice,
Trump will
but
have been in the
J.D.
White
Vance
House
is
and
great.
in charge of this country for 7 months. And in this first 7 months, he has accomplished some unprecedented things for the security and the safety of all American citizens. As you know, when he campaigned to get elected as President of the United States, he promised the American people that he would secure our border, that he would ensure that the invasion of the illegal criminals that were coming into our country under the Biden administration would be stopped, and that he would do all that he could to restore the safety to our American communities. And he has done exactly that. In fact, today we have the most secure U.S. border that we've ever had in the history of this nation. It's incredible the work that he has done along with the good folks out of CBP and ICE and law enforcement, federal agencies in partnership with states like Texas right here, and also with our local law enforcement that have stepped up and deployed individuals and resources to help us secure this border. Today, we're going to be talking about the incredible work that these individuals have done in making sure that we're continuing to construct infrastructure. And when you look at what is behind us as far as the wall that is being built, you see obviously the structure, but also there will be more added to it as far as technology, cameras, sensors that will ensure that it will be secure far into the future and that will be efficient as well with our resources and our individuals and our agents that are out here on duty day and night making sure that America is safe. Remember that a nation without borders is no nation at all. And we're so thankful that we have a president that understands that and understands that a secure border is important to our country's future. Now, if you look at the structure that's behind me, it's tall, which makes it very, very difficult to climb, almost impossible. It also goes deep into the ground, which would make it very difficult, if not impossible, to dig under. And today, we are also going to be painting it black. That is specifically at the request of the president, who understands that in the hot temperatures down here, when something is painted black, it gets even warmer, and it will make it even harder for people to climb. So we are going to be painting the entire southern border wall black to make sure that we encourage individuals to not come into our country illegally, to not break our federal laws, but that they will abide and come to our country the right way so that they can stay and have the opportunity to become United States citizens and pursue the American dream. Now, we got an incredible amount of resources allocated to us in the big, beautiful bill. And we're so thankful for that because that's going to allow us to continue construction. The construction right now is at the pace of a little bit less than a half a mile a day. And the border wall will look very different based on the topography and the geography of where it is built. Here you see structure. We will have waterborne infrastructure that will be put in place as well, and then that technology will be installed. And we'll utilize that to make sure that we're doing due diligence in securing every single inch of our border. And it's not just our southern border that we are concerned with and putting resources into. It is every border from our maritime seas to also our northern border to make sure that the American citizens can have safety, but also that our laws are enforced. I'm very grateful today to be here with two individuals that are leading our effort as far as securing our border, but also day to day making sure that our laws are enforced. I'd like to introduce first the Chief of the U.S. Border Patrol, Mike Banks, to share a few words with you. And then after him, Walter Slozer is the interim Chief of the Border Patrol here in the El Paso sector. So with that, Chief Banks, would you like to come up and share a few words?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Madam Secretary. As she said, my name is Michael Banks. I'm Chief of the United States Border Patrol. And what you see behind us is just the beginning of a lot of wall we're going to be building with money that we received from the Big Beautiful Bill. This is just one of many ways that we are fortifying our border and securing our border against illegal immigration. Once we get the infrastructure up, we'll also see lighting go up, camera systems go up, ground sensing technology as well. And then, as the Secretary said, we're going to paint it black for two reasons. One, the black's going to protect the wall from rusting, and two, black gets hotter and makes it more difficult to climb. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Chief Slozer, who's the interim Chief Patrol Agent of the El Paso sector.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Chief Banks. I just want to thank the administration, the Secretary, and Chief Banks for, one, having the will to secure the border in between the ports of entry. We've long known that barriers are key into shaping the operational environment. We're going to continue to build these barriers. And, you know, it's a message, a clear message that says we are removing people from the smuggling cycle. We're not going to put them into that. And we're promoting economic prosperity on the north side. So this area north of us is in the plans as to build and put in shops and schools and houses, and this is going to help secure this area for the betterment of the El Paso community, and we're taking border security serious. I've been through 6 different administrations, and I can tell you I've never felt the support from our leadership than I feel today, and that's under the leadership of our secretary. I'm proud to stand here with her, and I want to thank you for being out here to get our message to the community so that they know why border security is important to national security. It is national security. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Walter. And I want to thank the agents that are standing here with me today, but I also want to thank all of our other Border Patrol agents who stand on watch every single day, 24/7, to make sure that they're providing for the security of our nation and for our future. So may God bless them and keep them safe as they continue to do their work. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll let Walter speak to that because he knows specifically the individuals that they're encountering here. But I think it is remarkable that for May, June, and July, we've had 0 illegal aliens come into the United States of America, according to our records, and encounters that people that have come into our country that we have the most secure border in our nation's history. I also want to point out one other statistic that came out this week that was incredibly important to our country, is that according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, we have 1.6 million illegal aliens that have gone home voluntarily. They have left the United States, returned to their countries at the encouragement of President Trump and his policies so that they have an opportunity to come back to America the right way. So they have the opportunity to come back and pursue the American dream and provide for their families the right way into the future. So that's an incredible amount of individuals who recognize now was the time to go home. And if they choose to come back to the United States, to do it while abiding with our laws. But Walter, would you like to speak to who you're encountering at the border here in this sector specifically today?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for that question. So here in the El Paso sector, in 2023, we had one day where there were 2,300 people apprehended by the U.S. Border Patrol. We are now apprehending on a 7-day average about 41 people a day. And you ask, who are those individuals? The majority of them are single adults. The majority are from Mexico, followed by Guatemala and Ecuador. And those individuals are not unlike the 3 years before this, where they were following our Border Patrol agents, tracking them down, and we were stuck preserving life, and we had to take them out and get them out of the area, and no Border Patrol agents were patrolling the border. Unlike that, they are running from us. They are trying to utilize tunnels. They're trying to move left and right of our deployments, and we're apprehending those individuals. Our gotaways are the lowest they've ever been, and we're working with the Department of Justice. We're putting criminal charges. Since 1929, 8 U.S.C. 1325 has been a crime in the United States. We're putting criminal charges on those individuals, applying consequences, and our partners in ICRO are removing those individuals from the United States. But they are individuals that are actively seeking to get in, the people we should have been focused on for the entirety of our Border Patrol careers, and we're not dealing with those asylum seekers and those individuals that commit a crime by entering illegally and still are in our process. So those are the individuals that we're seeing, ma'am.
What is your gotaway rate?
7-day average is 9. Compared to 400 about this time last year. So, and that's key, right? Messages mean, words and messages matter. It is not okay to enter the country illegally, and somebody's finally saying it. That's our leadership here in the U.S. government, and we're, as the Border Patrol here in El Paso sector, I can say on the behalf of the men and women of El Paso sector, who I am greatly appreciative of, that we are proud to enforce these laws, and the morale is better than it's ever been, because we are doing our national security job, and we are keeping this area safe. Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Yes. Yeah, it is. It's specifically going to be on structure that looks like this, that's made out of steel, and it is to protect the infrastructure from wear and tear and erosion that would occur. But also it is because the president specifically recognized that black gets hotter in this weather and in this heat and in this sun, and that when you touch something that's hot during these kinds of temperatures, it's very difficult to climb it, very difficult to cut it, to handle it. And he wants to make it as difficult as possible for individuals who are trying to break our laws. He means what he says, and he follows through on what he says he's going to do. And this was something he spoke to me about after the election that he wanted to do. And when he was sworn in, we immediately got to work on setting up the opportunity that when the structure is built, that it would be painted so it'd be protected and that it would be hot. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, most of that construction and those contracts go through the Department of Homeland Security, except for the ones that are on military installations. And so that is a DoD project that we're working in partnership with, which President Trump has committed to have a whole of government approach. He's got every agency and cabinet member working together to address the situation that we have with criminal illegal aliens that are in our country. And so we're thankful for Secretary Hegseth's leadership and his partnership in that effort. But we're continuing to build partnerships with governors, with other local entities and local sheriffs or law enforcement agencies that are willing to open detention centers as well. In fact, in Nebraska, we have one that will be opening up soon. Called the Cornhusker Clinker, I think it is, and that will be very helpful strategically, not far from Denver, Colorado, that will help us out with logistics and transportation to return people to their home countries. Yes. How will I further expand what? Detention centers? Well, we will continue to work the processes to make sure that people go through their due process hearings and deport them as soon as possible. So our hope is that we'll continue to build partnerships for more detention centers, but I'm very focused on making sure that once we're picking someone up in our country with final removal orders or criminal convictions and charges, that we're removing them as soon as possible too. My goal is not to build hundreds of thousands of beds. My goal is to get people out of this country that are here illegally. And so that's where our focus is, and we'll build as many detention beds as we need to get the job done. To Mexico? Oh, to New Mexico. There could be. I know that New Mexico has some debates going on with our detention centers, but we're planning on keeping our presence there and expanding it if possible. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're grateful for their partnership and their presence. There hasn't been a date indicated when that military presence will end on the border. And when it does, it'll be the president's decision. Yes. For the painting project, not necessarily all of it has been contracted out yet, but we'll move pretty quickly. As you can see, the gentleman behind me and the folks behind me are working very hard, and they move fast. Oh, I believe that they have access and oversight responsibilities that they're able to conduct as long as they're giving us the due notice time in order to make sure we can do so safely, and that we have the ability to make sure everyone in the facility and everyone touring the facility can do that with an adequate number of security guards present, with an adequate number of people to conduct it in an orderly manner. So we're going to continue to facilitate that as long as they keep requesting the tours and visits. Yes. Mm-hmm. 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 Don't touch it. They have a choice. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Good job. Thanks for doing that. Appreciate it so much.
Christy Norm. Another classy lady. Hardworking as well. She's told the story of her and her father a lot of times, and every time I hear it, it just sounds like it's new. This is what a working administration looks like. Every single day, even on the weekends, we get updates from the Trump administration. Isn't this what you voted for? Accountability? They don't have to tell you they're working. You see they're working. They don't have to announce, we're working. No, we see you. See, Shelly says, why are they not spraying? I don't know, see. I don't have extensive knowledge when it comes to painting work or painting job. But you think they should be spraying it, see, Shelly? Should it be sprayed instead of actually painting with the rollers? It's a lot of miles. I don't think I guess they're just paying this part just so we can see that they're actually painting. But it's a lot of miles, so I guess they're gonna do it like subsequently, I guess. Oh yes, it's Shelley for sure. But don't forget who the commander-in-chief is this time. Don't forget that the director of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, asked people in Texas, well, the government officials in Texas, that she had to sign any approval above $100,000. So this administration is not going to be wasting money on government contracts. That's my opinion. I may be wrong, okay? But, you know, Trump, he's very effective. If you give him a number, he's going to tell you, no, you ain't going to do that for that number. Somebody say, I don't mind watching her paint. Or Comedy Central, right? On South Park. They've been playing with Kristi on South Park. No wonder, see, Shelley. I've been wondering where you got the good genes from. Really, see, Shelley. I've been wondering. Well, she's good with the paint job. Yeah, the government always pays, you know, like if you work with the government or if you work for the government, you're definitely going to get paid and on time. Yeah. Tell you that much. No legal citizen has been deported. It's always fake news with these folks. Oh, Trump is deporting legal citizen. No, he's not. And that's coming from someone who was not born in the United States. I wasn't born in the United States. And I do not support illegal immigration. Okay? It took me 5 years to become a United States citizen. I had to take a test. I had to study. So, come on, y'all. And I had to pay. Yeah, I can't forget that part. I had to pay to get all of my biometrics and all of that stuff done. Blood work. Of course, they don't want you having, you know, some sort of disease that you're going to bring into the United States. So they're going to test you out. They're going to test you out and see if you're good to go to stay in the United States. I did all of those stuff. I waited for my turn and I became a United States citizen. Okay, so every legal citizen or legal immigrant who became a citizen do not want illegal immigration, and that's just facts. See, Shelly, there's no way they're painting the top. It's not going to be painted. This right here is just for the American people to see that it's actually being done. It's not, you know, this is just a little, I would say, first show. But the real government contractors will be doing the actual job. This is just like a photo op type stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, you need those pictures. You need those pictures.
Yeah, you don't need any. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, so this guy, the French president Macron, he actually discusses with NBC. We're gonna check that out real fast right here. And I understand that he's going through some litigation with an American podcaster here concerning his wife. They're saying maybe she's a trans or not, allegedly. So, I mean, who knows? Yeah, is she giving him stars? Oh yeah, that's the stuff President Trump always gives everybody. I wish I got that when I went to the White House. I got some souvenirs from the White House when we went this April, but the actual gold bars that, well, not gold bars, but like gold symbol that President Trump gives people, I wish I got that part. We got a little souvenir when we went to the White House. All right. That is the show by the border. But definitely, this is how you want your border looking like: law enforcement around the border, nobody crossing illegally. No, they're dumping. All right, here we go. Macron.
President Macron, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to speak with you.
We are honored to have you here to speak with us. Mr. President, take me inside your meeting at the White House today, those high-stakes talks. Are you now closer to reaching a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine?
Look, I do hope, and I really believe it was an important meeting at the White House this 18th of August with President Zelensky, President Trump, and a series of European leaders here. All of us, we want peace. All of us. From day one. And this is very important. Second, all of us are very clear that we want to stop the killings as soon as possible. You can call it a ceasefire, you can call it a truce, an armistice, but we want to stop these killings. Number three, all of us, we are clear about the fact that we want a robust and long-standing peace, which means no peace without what we call security guarantees. Why? Because we want to preserve Ukraine from risk of new aggression after this peace. And we want to contain Russia as an aggressive power vis-à-vis the rest of Europe. Here are our objectives, and I think we did progress because we converge, all of us, first to work very actively on security guarantees. So from tomorrow we will work very actively. And, you know, we launched in February this year this coalition of the willing. We have now 30 countries, and we co-chair with the UK this coalition, and this coalition will work very actively now with the United States of America, which is a great news, in order to provide, the day we have a peace agreement, these security guarantees together. And second, we decided as well that a bilateral meeting between President Zelensky and President Putin will be organized, and this is the clear outcome of the discussion at the end of our meeting between President Trump and President Putin. And this bilateral meeting will be followed by a trilateral meeting between President Zelensky, President Trump, President Putin. And I proposed as well, as a follow-up, that we enlarge and have a multilateral meeting, because the Europeans, probably the Turks as well, and some others have to be around the table, because we don't just speak about the security of Ukraine, but the security of the whole Europe. So on all these points, we had a clear convergence. And for me, it was very important today, after the meeting between President Trump and President Putin in Alaska, to have this clear convergence of Europe and Ukraine and the US on these key outcomes.
I want to delve into all of those issues. I do have to ask you, President Trump was overheard on a microphone talking to you, and he said, quote, "I think he wants to make a deal," meaning Putin. "I think he wants to make a deal for me." You understand that? As crazy as it sounds. What went through your head when he said that to you?
I think if, at the end of the day, if we have a deal which is compliant with this long-standing and robust peace, this is a great news. And your president, indeed, is very confident about the capacity he has to get this deal done, which is a good news for all of us, and can break this, I would say, this daily killings, which are the responsibility of the Russian aggressor. So I think it's a great news. My point, and this is why we've worked so hard during the past few months, and we need this convergence, is to be sure that this deal is not detrimental to Ukraine and Europe. And all of us, we want a deal and we want a peace deal. But we want to make sure that this peace, and so this deal, will be something which will allow the Ukrainians to recover the country and live in peace, to be sure the day after this peace deal that they will have sufficient deterrence power not to be attacked again, and to be sure for the Europeans that they will live in peace and security. So this is the nature of the peace, which will be now the core of our work. But I think this is a great news, and indeed your president is very confident about his capacity to get this deal done with President Putin, and it's great.
Let's talk about the issues. You were very firm. You still think a ceasefire is necessary. President Trump, on his way to Alaska, said that he wanted there to be a ceasefire agreement. Otherwise, he said there would be very severe consequences. Do you think a ceasefire is still possible?
I do hope. Let's call it once again truce or ceasefire, but we have to stop the killings. First, for humanitarian reasons. Second, because if we want sincere, reasonable, comprehensive talks in order to build a peace, you cannot organize this discussion, in the middle of the bombs. Look, today we were with President Zelensky. President Trump called President Putin at the end of our meeting, and we meet again right after this call. In the meantime, the Russian army organized a series of strikes on civilians in Ukraine. So it's impossible for an Ukrainian president and Ukrainian officials to have talks about peace as their country is being destroyed and as their civilians are being killed.
Did you, all of the European leaders, press President Trump on that point today and insist that he continue to apply pressure to Putin for a ceasefire right now?
I will be very clear on that. President Trump was the first one to propose a ceasefire in February. In March, President Zelensky accepted the unconditional ceasefire in Doha. The one who always refused a ceasefire has been President Putin.
So should President Trump impose sanctions on President Putin now?
And President Trump was very clear on the fact that after Alaska, his perspective is not just to have a ceasefire, but a peace deal, which is much more comprehensive. So it could be a good news, but it's clear that a peace deal will not be written overnight. It will take time, probably a few days, few weeks. And during this period of time, we need a truce. This is why I call it a truce. And not a ceasefire, if we want to use a different word. But we have to stop the killings. So we all agree with your president that we have to increase the pressure to stop the killings and to launch a process to have a full-fledged peace agreement. So this is our objectives.
Can he do that? Can you apply pressure to Putin without imposing
I'm very much
sanctions?
in favor of the fact that if at the end of the day there is no serious progress during the bilateral, or if there is a refusal of the trilateral meeting, and or if the Russians don't comply with this approach, yes, we have to increase the sanctions, secondary and primary sanctions, in order to increase the pressure on the Russians to do so. And sometimes I'm very shocked by, I have to say, the fact that a lot of people can present something as just a war between two sides. There is an aggressor, which is Russia. There is a country which decided to kill people, to steal children, and who refused this ceasefire and peace. So we cannot just create an equivalent situation between Ukraine and Russia.
Let me ask you about the discussion over security guarantees.
Yes.
What exactly did you agree to as it relates to security guarantees? Does that mean European troops? And does that mean U.S. troops?
Look, I think for me it's a very important progress of the past few days that your president expressed a clear commitment of the U.S. to be part of the security guarantees. It's brand new. And last February, when I took the responsibility to gather a series of European leaders with President Zelensky in Paris, and we followed up in London, and we created this coalition of the willing. And it was a reaction to the feeling we had that we could see a temptation to go to a rapid peace, but without any guarantee for Ukraine. And we know what it means. It was Georgia 2008, but it was as well Crimea 2014. And there is full certainty that if you make any peace deal without security guarantee, Russia will never respect its words, will never comply with its own commitments. So it's for us totally critical, and this is an essential part of any deal for Ukraine and for the Europeans. This is for our own security. So this is a very important progress of the past few days, that the US now is willing to be part of this security guarantees. We worked with the Coalition of the Willing, which is co-chaired by UK and France, and we have a very clear view of the content of such a security guarantee. The first pillar is the Ukrainian army. The first security guarantee for Ukraine and Europe is to have an important Ukrainian army which will resist to any new aggression and which will create a deterrence effect vis-à-vis, the attempt to aggress Ukraine again. So we worked on the format of this army, and in fact, what we want is no limitation in terms of number of soldiers, ammunition, equipment, and so on. And who is ready to help the Ukrainians on what? Training, equipment, Patriot system, SAMT, new generation system, aircraft, and so on, to have this solid Ukrainian army. The second pillar is to be sure that in the air, on sea, on land, we have a support from all the different key partners of the coalition of the willing to come and to support the Ukrainian forces. Not to be a substitute, and the obsession and the first priority is not to have our boots on the ground, but to be sure that we have regular operations which are a sort of guarantee or strategic signal that it's not just a piece of paper, that the day they are attacked, we will be here. Because this piece of paper, we had it in the past. It was called the Budapest Agreement, and it didn't work. So we want to create a clear strategic signal of our support to the Ukrainian army. And some of the key people of the key countries, part of the coalition of the willing, already committed to do it. UK, France, Turkey, for instance, which has a very important role in the sea, and a series of other countries. So now, from tomorrow, we will start to work with the US, all the members of the coalition of the willing, these 30 countries, from Canada to Japan, Australia, and a lot of Europeans, in order to clearly go to the detail and say who is ready to do what. And this first phase is very important and should be finalized before the trilateral meeting, because these security guarantees are the one to put Ukraine in a situation to negotiate.
And I'm getting a wrap. Let me just ask you two very lightning round questions. As you have said, Russia is the aggressor here. And yet President Trump has talked about the possibility of land swaps. There are reports that President Putin wants to keep all of the territory that he's illegally occupied and even more, the entire Donbass region. Is that a non-starter, and yet is the only solution for Ukraine to give some of the territory to Russia?
I don't see any swap in the proposal of the Russians, except a swap in comparison with what they wanted at the beginning. But let me be clear on territory. They got a lot of territories after the first phase of the war between February and summer 2022. But because the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people did organize themselves very impressively, because we organized unprecedented support, they managed to push them back at the end of the second semester of 2022. And if you take the situation between November 2022 and now, more than 1,000 days of war, the Russian army took less than 1% of the Ukrainian territory. So I want everybody listening to us and watching your program to be aware of the fact that the Russians, they are not performing well there. 3.5 years ago, they launched a special operations which was supposed to last 3 weeks. And during the past 1,000 days, they took less than 1% of the Ukrainian territory. So all those who are saying, I mean, the Ukrainians are lost, they will lose, it's a total fake news. Now, when we speak about territory, this is to the Ukrainian president and the Ukrainian people to discuss about it. It's not my job. And it's absolutely unacceptable to have all the leaders discussing about that. And your president was very clear before Alaska as well. Why? Because it's about sovereignty. And third, the day we start accepting the recognition of territories being taken by force, this is just the end of international order. How do you want us collectively to be credible in other places in Europe, in Africa? How do you want us to keep having debate on Taiwan? Do you believe one second if we recognize part of Donbass or Crimea or I don't know what, and you say, okay, because this is, I don't know what, nuclear power, it's okay. There is no more international order. This is not compliant with the UN Charter. And the day after, our collective credibility, the US, Europeans, all these permanent members of the Security Council will be totally zero vis-à-vis all the others who think we are the garant in last resort of this international order.
I'm getting a wrap, but very last question in a few seconds. We are going to see this meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky. What is your level of optimism as we sit here today that they can break through this logjam?
Look, I think the optimism of your president is to be taken seriously. So if he considers he can get a deal done, this is a great news, and we have to do whatever we can to have a great deal being fixed, concluded. But a great deal is a deal with security guarantees and a robust peace. As far as I'm concerned, when I look at the situation and the facts, I don't see President Putin very willing to get peace now. But perhaps I'm too pessimistic. But so I think it's very important to launch this process. I think it's very important we build these security guarantees. This is a game changer for Ukraine and for the European security. And I think we have to launch the process of this bilateral meeting, this trilateral meeting, and this multilateral meeting. But I think at a point of time, probably, we will have to increase the pressure on Russia to be sure they want peace. Because as long as President Putin and his people will consider they can win this war and get a better result by force, they will not negotiate. This is my feeling and my conviction. So it's important to remain united. This is a key message of the meeting today, to be lucid about the situation, to be committed and we are. And I will do my best, and France will do its best to have a positive bilateral and trilateral meeting and to deliver the results following these lines. But we are ready as well to step up sanctions and tariffs in order to increase the pressure. And I think it will be very important, in case of failure of such a process, that your president as well takes the baton and increase the pressure.
President Macron, thank you so very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is my pleasure.
Why didn't you ask him about the alleged situation? But this is way more important, I'll tell you that much. All right, Jasmine Crockett.
Not very much, except for the fact that there's a clear violation of constitutional rights at play. To have a party claim to be the party of law and order as they are federalizing law enforcement in D.C., and at the same time clearly violating the Constitution, whether we're talking about these maps that they're trying to implement, as well as simultaneously violating the Voting Rights Act, or if we're talking about taking the body of persons who refuse to be coerced into signing an agreement saying that someone can basically stalk them and watch their every move. This is something we have not seen in modern day democracies. In fact, this is not something that we see in democracies. And I really don't care your political affiliation. You should be concerned. Now, a lot of people look at Democrats and say, well, Democrats would never do that because they're the good guys. I get that. But this is a dangerous road to travel down. And I do applaud those in California that said, if you want to play with us, we will play back. And right now, Kevin Kiley in California, I'm sure he is so enlightened, maybe because his seat is on the chopping block. But the representative is begging the Speaker of the House to actually bring his bill to the floor to stop mid-decade redistricting, more so because he wants to save himself. He still has not said anything about Texas.
When you listen to Texas Democrats, they'll say this is a success, what we did, because it brings national attention to this issue. But when you look at the broader map of the entire U.S., I wonder if that attention is going to matter when Republicans clearly have the advantage when it comes to controlling states and having single party control. There's 15 states the Republicans have that to Democrats 4. Is that really enough that it brought national attention when that broad map could hand power to President Trump in the next Congress?
Well, here's the deal. He was going to seek power and seek to take it no matter what. We saw how he attempted to handle things the last time he lost an election. He called down to the governor. This is a guy who does not care about the rule of law whatsoever. So the fact that we're actually fighting back, I think that does matter. When you look at the approval ratings of the Democratic Party, part of that isn't because of our policies, it's because of a lack of fight. So at a very minimum, we are going to have to overperform. We have been overperforming ever since he's been in office. And that is one of the scariest things. They can draw this map whatever way they want to. I have a feeling that they're still not going to get 5 seats out of Texas. I know that is their plan. But the reality is that when you look at somebody like a Henry Cuellar won his seat while Donald Trump won that seat by 7 points. So I know that there are Democrats that know how to overperform even when they draw these maps these ways. They always thought that they were going to have Vicente Gonzalez's seat as well as Henry Cuellar's, and they have beat back the odds. I don't think that they won't necessarily beat back the odds this time. I can tell you that we are finally getting some investments into Texas because of how they are treating us, especially in a state that is a majority minority state, a state in which we have seen how he has handled immigrants. And so I think it is going to be interesting. I think the backlash is going to be even bigger because he decided to do this. And at the end of the day, you don't have to worry about California. You can stop this right now if you just say, hey, we will stop in Texas because California doesn't go into play unless Texas does. It is a trigger. But as it relates to Indiana, he's probably not going to get that one. The state law is probably not going to be very helpful for him in Indiana.
You commend California for responding.
I do.
And you call what Republicans are doing in Texas cheating.
Yeah.
And yet the appearance for some looking at California with the response may also be that California is cheating.
People can say what they want to say. But at the end of the day, we are fighting for democracy. This is not something that California wanted to do, as you heard from the state senators in California. This is something that they feel forced to do, something they feel obligated to do, because in a democracy, you have to answer for your policies or your lack thereof. That is what democracy looks like, where the power belongs to the people. They are trying to take the power away from the people so that he doesn't have to answer for his failed policies. If he believes that his big ugly bill is just that beautiful, then go sell it and go win the legit way. But we know that they cheated to get the majority this time. If you will recall, when we look at North Carolina, as soon as they ended up with a Republican majority in that Supreme Court, what did they do? They decided to take their map from 7-7, which is pretty much what the state of North Carolina looks like, and instead they added an additional 3 seats for the Republicans. So now it's 10-4. Well, when you look at the voting, nothing looks like 10-4. And they only did that once the Republicans took control. Do you know the difference in the Democrats and Republicans controlling the House? It was 3 seats. So the Republicans, they are cheaters all day, every day. But we have never tried to match their energy until now. And I applaud it.
No, you know. No. Look, that was Hot Wheels. Like she always says, Hot Wheels. Hot Wheels, Jasmine Crockett. All right, JD Vance.
Grass all day, we give you a hamburger. Not a fair trade, but we're grateful for everything you guys do. So, how long have you guys been working here at this area? Has it been the whole 9 days? About 7. It's been about 7. Okay. General, tell me what's going on here. What are you guys seeing? Okay. Yep. Past 7 days, actually kind of amazing. So you guys are doing a hell of a job. We're proud of you. We're grateful to you, and I just wanted to come by and say thanks and hang out for a little bit. So let's say hello for a bit, and I think we can talk to this board, but just want to shake some hands and say hey to guys. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. All right, good to see you. Thank Maria, how are we doing, man? How y'all doing? All right, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm honored. Yeah, of course. Yeah, come here. We'll take a photo right now. Where are you from? Oh, great. Okay, awesome. Photo here. We'll make sure you get a copy. Yeah, we'll get a copy. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Got it. All right, awesome. Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you. Hey guys, how you doing? Good to see you all. How's it going over the hill? Good. Busy summer? Full summer? Yeah. Super fun? Okay. Good. Okay. Well, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for all your help. Yeah, good to see you all. Hey guys, how we doing? Good. Good to see you guys. Thank you. Oh, I already said hello to you. Hey, guys, how you doing? Appreciate you. Thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah, so tell me, is it going a little better here? Okay. Have you seen the transformation last? He's good. Yeah, I'm still in I brought my kids here.
Are they protesting back there?
Thank you. God bless you. Ceasefire. Good to see you. Thank you. Nice to meet you. So where are y'all from? South Carolina. Okay, so pretty much everybody's in South Carolina. Okay, Charleston, Columbia. Okay, good. We appreciate you guys helping us out. Thank you. It means a lot. Specialist, how you doing? Sir, how we doing?
Great. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I can't complain. This is a lot more fun like I do most days. All right, appreciate it. Good to see you, man. Thanks for all your help. God bless them, and I appreciate it. It means a lot. Thank you. Sorry, thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. All right. So let's sign in here. Okay.
Whatever you want.
Sorry. I just want to go. So what's the plan? We're doing the gaggle, right? Are we doing that up here? Or are we doing it later? Wherever you want to. Okay. All right. Let's follow Karen here. All right. Karen, you lead the way.
Back to where you were.
All right. Okay. All right.
Right there is good.
Right here? Photo right here? Is that what they said? So you can be up here. You can be up. Your audio can up here. Am I out of your shot? Okay. Cool camera. Do you want me up on here or do you want me to? So, we have a few reporters here. So, look, guys, what we want to do here was a couple things. First of all, we're going to say come and say thank you to the National Guards folks, to the cops for actually keeping this place safe. If you look at what's happened in Washington, D.C. in just the past 9 days, we've seen a 35% reduction in violent crime. We've seen over a 50% reduction in robberies. We are seeing really substantial effects because these guys are busting their ass. So I want to come here, highlight what they're doing, say thank you in person, obviously pass out a few burgers, but most of all, just send a message to the American people. Look, we don't have to live like this. We do not have to allow our cities to be taken over by violence and by disorder and by chaos. You can actually do stuff. You can actually bring law and order to communities. You've just got to have the political willpower to do it. And I think you hear these guys outside here screaming at us. Of course, these are a bunch of crazy protesters. But I'll tell you, a couple of years ago when I brought my kids here, they were being screamed at by violent vagrants, and it was scaring the hell out of my kids. And one of the things that we've done already in Union Station in just 9 days is we've made it a place where people can walk around safely. They can bring their kids again. They can see this beautiful monument, the architecture. They can have a meal with their friends and their loved ones because, again, we brought some law and order back to Washington, D.C. So I want to thank Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller. I want to thank all the people, the guardsmen here and the police officers who have worked very hard. And I know that we've traded now some violent, crazy people who are screaming at kids with a few crazy liberals who are screaming at the vice president, but I think that's a very worthwhile trade to make because we want our people to be able to enjoy our beautiful cities. And the last thing I'll say is to the American people, D.C. is already safer than it was 9 days ago, but we're going to make it safer still to come. This is your city. You should feel free to come and visit here, have a meal, see all these incredible monuments, and actually enjoy yourself, and that's what we're trying to make happen. And I think that if we set a standard in Washington, D.C., that political willpower can bring some common sense, law and order back to these communities, then maybe some other communities and other cities will follow suit. So it's kind of crazy. You hear these guys outside. They appear to hate the idea that Americans can enjoy their communities. They do the fact that D.C. a week ago had a higher murder rate than Trinidad and Tobago, which the United States State Department has said you shouldn't visit because it's unsafe. We ought to be able to enjoy great American cities. That's what we're trying to do with the Trump administration. And we want to thank all of our law enforcement and National Guardsmen for making it possible. We made a lot of progress in 9 days. We're going to make a whole lot more. I'll let Pete and Stephen Miller say something, and we'll take a few questions from the reporters. So, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'll just start by saying yes and amen to everything you said. The American people, the residents of D.C. deserve a safe and beautiful city. That's our mission. That's what every one of these captains, lieutenants, staff sergeants, specialists, privates, they're here because they're patriots who serve the country and believe we deserve a beautiful, safe capital. And when I talk to all of them, Stephen, we've all had a chance to talk to them, they're proud of this mission. They're proud to be a part of making sure law and order is established here in the capital. We're resourcing with everything they need, working with our law enforcement partners. So the National Guard, the Defense Department is proud to be standing with you and the President in ensuring we have a safe capital that is beautiful, that residents can come visit. And we're committed to this mission just like the one at the southern border and in Los Angeles. Our law enforcement officers deserve to be able to do their job safely. And American citizens, putting American citizens and our country first is something President Trump has emphasized from the beginning. So thank you to these troops. I know I always liked to get cheeseburger when I was in uniform, so hopefully we could deliver a few of those. It's an honor to be here with you, and also thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you to the Vice President for bringing us here today. Thank you, Secretary, for your leadership, and most importantly, thank you to the men and women of the National Guard. I think here's the most important point. There are residents who lived in Washington, D.C. their entire lives. Their parents lived here, their grandparents lived here, and they have lived for generations in intolerable conditions of crime and decay. There are parts of the city, I moved to the city 20 years ago. There are places where I've seen graffiti that has been untouched for 2 decades. There are homeless encampments that have made it impossible for families to use public parks and public recreation for as long as I've lived here. There are hundreds of residents of this city who are shot in street violence every single year, making it one of the most violent cities on planet Earth. And for too long, 99% of this city has been terrorized by 1% of this city. And the voices that you hear out there, those crazy communists, they have no roots. They have no connections to the city. They have no families they're raising in this city. They have no one that they're sending to school in this city. They have no jobs in this city. They have no connections to this community at all. But they're the ones who've been advocating for the 1%, the criminals, the killers, the rapists, the drug dealers. And I'm glad they're here today. Because me, Pete, and the Vice President are all going to leave here, and inspired by them, we're going to add thousands more resources to this city to get the criminals and the gang members out of here. We're going to dismantle those networks, and we're going to prove that a city can serve for the law-abiding citizens who live there. We are not going to let the communists destroy a great American city, let alone the nation's capital. And let's just also address one other thing. All these demonstrators that you've seen out here in recent days, all of these elderly white hippies, they're not part of the city and never have been. And by the way, most of the citizens who live in Washington, D.C. are black. This is not a city that has had any safety for its black citizens for generations. And President Trump is the one who is fixing that with the support of the Metropolitan Police Department,
Facts.
the support of the National Guard, and our federal law enforcement officers. So we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies that all need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old, and we're going to get back to the business of...
Think about it. This is Stephen Miller calling people screaming white hippies. But nobody's going to hear that now. They're going to say, well, the Trump administration, they're racist. He just called people white hippies, coming from Stephen Miller.
protecting the American people and the citizens of Washington, D.C. Thank you, Stephen. A few questions.
Mr. Vice President, why are troops stationed here at Union Station on the National Mall instead of areas in D.C. where crime is statistically highest?
Well, if you've ever been to Union Station in the last few years with your family, you know that crime is actually extremely high right here in Union Station. You have vagrants, you have drug addicts, you have the chronically homeless, you have the mentally ill who harass, who threaten violence, who attack families, and they've done it for far too long. This should be a monument to American greatness. This should be a place where you can come and share a meal or go shopping with your family. It should not be a place where parents of small children are afraid to bring them because, to Stephen's point, we've empowered criminals over the people who actually need public safety in the city. So I think Union Station is a great example of what's possible when you actually have the political willpower to bring law and order and common decency back to the public spaces of the United States of America. So many Americans live in cities, they occupy these spaces, they know how unsafe they are, and they would love to be able to just live their life in places like Union Station without violent criminals making it impossible. We have changed so much in 9 days, and I thought it important to highlight how great of a space this could be, how easy it could be to actually enjoy something like Union Station if you just had politicians who stopped prioritizing violent criminals over the public citizens who deserve public safety in their own communities.
And to add to that real quick, we talked to a first responder before we came up here, said this is their #1 call location is Union Station for first responders. So it's not as if this is insignificant. In many ways, this is part of the epicenter. And we go to that and return it to the safe location that it should be. It also frees up resources around the city. And you've seen a majority of the arrests happening in a lot of those places that need help.
That's right.
For crime
Will you extend past 30 days?
For crime.
Will you extend past 30 days? And do you think you have congressional? Will Congress go along with that?
Well, look, we'll ultimately let the President of the United States determine where we are after 30 days of this emergency order. I think that we're going to make a lot of progress over the next 20 days. I think that we're 9 days into this thing. But if the President of the United States thinks that he has to extend this order to ensure that people have access to public safety, then that's exactly what he'll do. If he thinks he doesn't have to do that, obviously he'll make that determination. But what we're going to do is try to empower these guys to do as good of a job as possible to bring public safety and order back to Washington, D.C. This is the national, cultural, and political capital of the world's greatest nation. And you talk to people, black, brown, white, so many of them are afraid to bring their kids into its public spaces. It's a shame. It's a blight. It actually should make every American ashamed that the world's leading superpower, our national capital, was unsafe for families to walk around at night. That is a disgrace. We don't think that it's acceptable, and thank God we have the presidential leadership to change it, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Were crime statistics manipulated by the D.C. police?
Well, I think that crime statistics all over our country were massively underreported because a lot of people would pick up the phone, they'd call somebody, they'd try to get help, and nobody would show up. If you look at wait times, at 911 response times all across our country, but certainly in Washington, D.C., they were way too long. And that wasn't because of the D.C. police, that was because there was too much crime and too few law enforcement agents on the street to bring order and decency to this city. You talk to these guys. I talked to 3 police officers earlier. I've talked to the National Guard. They are so happy that they've been empowered to do their job, which is to make American streets safe for American citizens. And I think that empowerment is going to keep on going until we make America, and D.C. in particular, a safe place to be.
What evidence do you have that the DOJ has? Are you going to be releasing it?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to be releasing evidence of this?
Of what? That D.C. has a terrible crime problem? You just got to look around. Obviously, D.C. has a terrible crime problem. The Department of Justice statistics back it up. The FBI statistics back it up. Just talk to a resident of this city, this beautiful, great American city. Don't they deserve... we talk about human rights. We hear these people outside screaming, "Free D.C." Let's free D.C. from lawlessness. Let's free Washington, D.C. from one of the highest murder rates in the entire world. Let's free Washington, D.C. so that young families can walk around and feel safe and secure. That's what we're trying to free D.C. from. And as Stephen said, it's kind of bizarre that we have a bunch of old, primarily white people who are out there protesting the policies that keep people safe when they've never felt danger in their entire lives.
Which cities are next? Are you going to target any other?
Mr. Vice President, thank you, Mr. Vice President. What are your thoughts on the establishment media's criticisms of President Trump's push to end the Russia-Ukraine war?
Well, I'll let these guys jump in. I mean, look, on the Russia-Ukraine war, we'll obviously have time to talk about that. I think the president campaigned on being a president of peace. He's already ended 6 wars. He's trying to end another. I think it's kind of disgraceful that the American media is attacking the president for trying to bring peace to the world. But most importantly, the president is trying to bring peace to the streets of our own cities. I really can't overemphasize this enough. It's the greatest country in the world. We've got moms and dads and young families Shouldn't they be able to enjoy public spaces without vagrants taking away basic public safety from the American citizenry? The fact that it's taken so long to bring common decency and law and order back to Washington, D.C. is an indictment of a generation of failed leadership, and I hope these guys know how grateful we are that they're doing the job that so many failed to do. They're actually keeping the city safe. We're proud of you, and we're grateful to you.
Polls show that a majority of D.C. residents don't support the Guard. What's your message to that?
I'm sorry?
Polls show that a majority of D.C. residents don't support the Guard here. So what's your message to the majority of D.C. residents?
I'm highly skeptical that a majority of D.C. residents don't want their city to have better public safety and more reasonable safety standards within Washington, D.C. I don't know what poll you're talking about. Maybe the same polls that said Kamala Harris will win the popular vote by 10 points. Okay, we're going to stop there. We're going to grab a quick bite with some of the soldiers here and the National Guardsmen who are keeping the city safe again. I just want to say we're grateful to these guys. You guys are making D.C. safe again. We're proud of you and we're grateful to you.
Brooklyn City today needs to be involved in security guarantees.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, press.
Press, everyone's going back. Cool press.
All right. That is the show for tonight. You just heard from the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, and of course, Secretary of War. Some people call it Secretary of Defense, but we've heard the Commander-in-Chief, the 45th, now the 47th President of the United States, saying that he might change the name to Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. So, and we also saw Stephen Miller up there. With that being said, God is the greatest. America is favored by God, and this is the United States. This is not the divided state. So I get it. We laugh, we have fun, we joke around. But stay united, okay? Stay united, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican. It doesn't matter. What matters is you are American. You love the United States. It is the United States. Don't be divided, okay? This is the United States of America, okay? And instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on... Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. And believe in Almighty God, okay? And be nice to people. Okay, a lot of people are going through a lot. A lot is going on in this world. Mental illness, loneliness, depression, anxiety, financial instability. People are going through so much. A lot of people are going through so much. You just never know. Some people are one paycheck away from being homeless. So be kind to people. Shout out to our esteemed members. Dr. Luke the GOAT, God bless you. Shout out to Sandra, God bless you. Thank you for being here, Sandra. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Shout out to CRXR, God bless you, CRXR. Shout out to Ellie. Shout out to Ingram. Shout out to Ringmaster. And of course, our moderators, C. Shelley, God bless you. Good genes. C. Shelley. Yeah, C. Shelley, you're way too hip, okay? We gotta talk about that. Okay. C. Shelley's way too hip. Okay, you would think C. Shelley's probably like 24. She's way too hip, ladies and gentlemen. It's called good genes. All right, here we go. Shout out to Jet, MVP Jet. Busky Bucket Master is, of course, a responsible father, doing what he has to do for his children. So God bless Busky. Who else do we have here? Shout out to, okay, let me just give random shout out. Whiter 616 or Wither 616. Matthew Johnston, God bless you. Push Paraj. Everybody, man. Thank you for tuning in, every single one of you. God bless you. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to turn on your notification bell. God bless you guys. Okay. Love you guys, man. God is the greatest. It is your boy Genesis, and you are currently tuned into the Genesis Show. God bless you. And shout out to the fathers. Thank you for doing awesome job. Thank you for being great people in your society. Thank you. Shout out to the mothers as well. Shout out to law enforcement officers. Shout out to Ice Baby. Shout out to the veterans. And shout out to the military personnel. Without the military, there would be no homeland. So shout out to the military personnel. Thank you for your service. And with that being said, your boy Genesis got to bounce. It is currently 4:23 a.m. and today's date is the 21st of August 2025. Love you guys. God is the greatest. God bless you. See you soon.